Female inmates are pregnant after they had sex with another inmate at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women in Clinton. That's the Department of Corrections. Last year, Edna Mahan began housing transgender inmates who identify as female. That's after a lawsuit filed by a trans woman who was forced to live in men's prisons.
Don't want you to see. It shows an everyday interaction between officers and inmates at a New Jersey prison. Just getting a camera inside is a huge security breach. Getting the tape out even tougher. You might find it tough to watch.
Well, new accusations are being lodged at the state's Department of Corrections, this time involving the Southwood State Prison in Cumberland County. Family of currently incarcerated inmates are accusing the prison of abuse and inhumane treatment, rallying today demanding answers and accountability.
A dozen people were federally indicted for smuggling drugs and cell phones to gang members who were running a criminal enterprise from behind bars. The ringleader in that case, Tavon White, also accused of having sex with 4 corrections officers. In response, Martin O'Malley created a task force to cut down on the fraternization between inmates and staff.
They allegedly provided detainees with drugs and cell phones in exchange for money and sex. And now 3 correctional officers are facing federal charges.
It is the largest case ever filed in federal court here in our state. 80 people have been indicted in connection with a drug and contraband smuggling ring at the Eastern Correctional Institution in Somerset County.
Today, 15 people, including inmates and corrections officers, were indicted as part of a contraband conspiracy.
These incidents took place at the Roxbury Correctional Institute in Hagerstown and shows a sophisticated criminal network.
That riot left 7 inmates dead, 22 others hurt. Green's facing multiple charges, including murder, assault and battery by a mob, and weapons charges. Opening statements began yesterday. The state argues Green was a part of the group of inmates that killed another inmate, Cornelius McCleary. Prosecutors shared video evidence of the brutal, which investigators say was fueled by gang rivalry within the prison.
That's how we do it in here. Baby mama's tripping, but she watching though, and she loving me though. She can talk all that she won't.
State leaders who saw the clip say it's dangerous and threatens security.
Columbia's Kirkland Correctional Institution. These 4 incarcerated men found strangled in a prison cell on Friday. Arrest warrants reveal the men were lured into a cell before they were strangled with electrical cords. 2 men found beaten and stabbed with a broken broomstick.
Perry Correctional in Pelzer is on lockdown this morning. State Senator Carl Allen tells her sister station, WSBA, that 10 inmates refused a command to return to their cells Friday. He says they also remained defiant Saturday.
South Carolina Department of Corrections 33-year-old David Viron Garrett died after a small fire in his cell.
Guards were sent to the hospital after SWAT teams came in and rescued them and 4 others from a riot here at this South Carolina prison. The incident occurred at the Trenton Correctional Institute, nearly 70 miles southwest of Columbia.
Tonight at 6, 23 people facing indictments accused of using drones to smuggle drugs and other contraband inside multiple Georgia state prisons.
Small, compact, and you can find them on Amazon for just a few $100. Federal prosecutors say this group knew that and took advantage.
At 11 o'clock, violence in Georgia prisons each month. Reports surface of inmates being beaten, stabbed, or even killed at the hands of other prisoners.
The Virginia Department of Corrections is investigating an alleged premeditated stabbing of 3 corrections officers at Wallens Ridge State Prison in Wise County. 2 other officers suffered minor injuries in the attack. The DOC says 5 of the 6 accused inmates are MS-13 gang members, and they're in the country illegally.
You're looking at a painting of 5-year-old Ryvan, a Belgian Malinois who worked with the Virginia Department of Corrections for most of his life. That career cut short when he was stabbed and kicked to death on April 2nd by incarcerated MS-13 gang members. He died defending his partner and an inmate.
The Taking Action investigation is the highly anticipated state probe into Red Onion State Prison. Virginia's only Supermax facility is now complete.
The investigation launched after reports of at least 6 inmates burning themselves because of harsh conditions there. Almost 3 weeks since Nassim Rulak escaped the custody of 2 Greensville correctional officers. You may remember our previous coverage. He escaped while being seen at St. Mary's Hospital in Henrico. and he's not been seen since. The only sign of him was a wet hospital gown found in a nearby home, indicating a break-in.
Prison problems. Laura.
I've talked with those who work inside local prisons, those who've retired or quit, and those who've lost loved ones inside prisons. A major issue, the pay for those who serve and protect. Well, that's changing. The North Carolina State Senate unanimously passed the Prison Reform Act this month.
The state Capitol Police are investigating the death of an inmate at Central Prison.
Yeah, prison staff found Dustin Payne collapsed in a housing unit common area. Investigators say he was attacked by another inmate. Payne was pronounced dead shortly after 8:30 last night. He was scheduled for release in February of 2025.
Samaj Short was assaulted in a housing area at the prison yesterday afternoon. Prison first responders tried to save his life until paramedics got there. Short, before he could get to the hospital, 3 other inmates were hurt in the incident but are expected to survive.
On the east coast of the United States, some prisons have earned reputations that extend far beyond their razor wire and concrete walls. These are institutions where violent offenders, powerful prison gangs, deadly riots, contraband smuggling, corruption, and chronic staffing shortages have created some of the most dangerous correctional environments in America. From Virginia's Supermax facilities and South Carolina's deadly prison riots to Maryland's gang-controlled housing units, North Carolina's history of corruption, Georgia's overcrowded prisons, and Florida's notorious institutions. Each state has faced its own battles to maintain order behind bars. In this documentary, we'll examine the incidents, investigations, and security failures that have made these prisons some of the most feared on the East Coast, revealing what really happens inside facilities where survival can depend on every decision made by inmates and correctional officers alike.
Safe conditions for both inmates and officers. Below, we examine these dangerous prisons in North Carolina, the harrowing incidents that occurred there, and the broader context of how state policies and reforms are addressing or failing to address the issues.
One Scotland County woman says more officers need to be arrested at the Scotland County Correctional Center after allegations of excessive force against her brother.
News 13's Andrea Gibbons is in Scotland County tonight and says this is in addition to 6 officers who are already accused of using excessive force.
I spoke with Cherie Hunt, who says that her brother was moved from the facility after excessive force was used on him by the correctional officers.
Scotland Correctional Institution in Laurenburg is one of North Carolina's largest prisons and, according to some who have been inside, among the most dangerous. In 2022 alone, 5 people died at Scotland Correctional. Inmates describe a culture of relentless violence. Stabbings, overdoses, and fights were occurring probably every other night, and often out of sight of overworked staff. One longtime prisoner went so far as to call Scotland a very dangerous prison in North Carolina, based on his experience in multiple facilities. Scotland has also struggled with overcrowding and inadequate supervision. An anonymous staff whistleblower reported that due to lack of space, some inmates had to be held in tiny 5-foot by 5-foot cages, essentially makeshift solitary confinement, while waiting for regular housing. Even prisoners on suicide watch were kept in these cages. A 2023 state audit confirmed Scotland Prison exceeded its designed capacity of 1,756 inmates, peaking at 1,789 men. Although officials claim the population is now below capacity, advocates note that numbers alone don't ensure safety. If Scotland says they're underneath the max, well, that's great. Multiple stabbings and inmate-on-inmate attacks have occurred, underscoring how crowding plus low staffing is a recipe for violence. The turmoil at Scotland CI reflects system-wide issues. Scotland is a glaring example. With too few officers to monitor dorms and recreation areas, deadly fights and even suicides have repeatedly happened. Since 2020, at least 4 inmates at Scotland CI have died by suicide, and 2 were stabbed to death during altercations. These grim statistics have prompted public outcry and even tours by state legislators to investigate conditions. Yet frontline employees remain fearful that without major changes, it's going to get worse, and something is going to break. A chilling warning from a staff member that applies not just to Scotland, but to many prisons across the state.
Past, we've showed you this massive facility from Chopper 9 Sky Zoom. But today I passed security, taking an inside look at the newly named Anson Correctional.
So I'm excited because of the space we have here.
New warden Miranda Richardson will be here tomorrow as 1,000 female prisoners start to arrive. For years, about 1,500 male inmates lived here, and Channel 9 often reported on assaults, stabbings, even inside the prison walls.
This is one of the holding cells where serious offenders will be held in the near future, and officials are promising things will be different here.
Developments this morning in Anson County, where overnight we learned an inmate died in her cell. Anson Correctional staff tells us Ava McNair was found unresponsive in her cell Tuesday morning.
Lanesboro Correctional Institution, renamed Anson Correctional Institution after 2016, was long regarded as one of North Carolina's most violent and mismanaged prisons. Located in Polkton, Anson County, this close custody men's facility opened in 2004 and quickly developed a checkered past of gang warfare and staff corruption. It was even described as one of the state's most dangerous prisons by the Associated Press. Before its conversion to a women's prison in 2019, Lanesboro was notorious for a string of brutal stabbings and deletions that exposed shocking collusion between correctional officers and inmate gangs. One infamous series of incidents at Lanesboro occurred in 2011-2012, when members of the Bloods and MS-13 gangs essentially took over a housing unit. Multiple inmates were stabbed after guards allegedly opened locked doors to let gang hitmen reach their targets. In one case, gang members armed with shanks were allowed into a rival inmate's cell, resulting in the deletion of prisoner Wesley Turner. Evidence later showed a unit manager, Jeffrey E. Wall, had fostered the gang's dominance, allowing them free access around the unit, hiding weapons, and even threatening others who might expose him. Wall was fired in 2013 after he tried to smuggle out bloody homemade knives and was caught concealing video evidence of the attacks. The warden, Lawrence Parsons, resigned in 2016 amid the fallout. The culture of violence and corruption at Lanesboro led to numerous lawsuits and investigations. In 2019, North Carolina taxpayers paid a $62,500 settlement to several former inmates who had been stabbed in the gang-led attacks. Their lawsuit argued that the administration wouldn't clamp down on murderous gangs and ignored a pervasive pattern of violence until it was too late. Advocates noted it should not have taken lawsuits and media scrutiny to get the state's attention. The violence in Lanesboro was pervasive, and it should have triggered an intervention much earlier, said attorney Ian Mance. In addition to inmate-on-inmate violence, assaults on staff were rampant at Lanesboro, fueled by understaffing and poor oversight. Former officers revealed that they were often assigned to supervise a unit with only 3 or 4 staff, instead of the 8 or 9 officers truly needed. This created opportunities for gangs to attack officers with near impunity. "It's not safe," one veteran guard said, noting he saw people get cut in the face and even witnessed riots with multiple inmates jumping on staff. In 2015 alone, there were 64 assaults on staff at Lanesboro, more than one per week, and nearly 1,000 total violent incidents recorded. Prison officials acknowledged the staffing crisis, but said they couldn't add positions without legislative funding. For years, Lanesboro embodied a worst-case scenario of a maximum security prison, an understaffed war zone where gangs ran rampant and both inmates and guards feared for their lives.
Well, Don Katie, state officials say that Shannon died late last night at Centera Norfolk General Hospital after being critically injured during those attacks. Officials say she was 49 years old and had worked at the prison in Elizabeth City for 4 years. Earlier this month, police say 4 inmates started a fire while trying to escape Pasquotank Correctional Institution. State officials say several inmates tried unsuccessfully to escape after the incident. 2 prison employees, Correctional Officer Justin Smith and Correctional Enterprises Manager Veronica Darden, died the day of the uprising. Several other employees were also injured in those attacks. Last week, officials released 911 calls from the prison. You can hear one caller describing those attacks.
911, how may I help you? We've got a medical emergency at the prison. We've got 3 officers down.
3 officers down?
That we know of, and there's still a disturbance going on.
Okay, 3 officers are down at the prison?
Yes.
All right, you got 3 officers down. Do you know how they were?
I think they were beat with a hammer, but we're not exactly sure.
Okay.
State officials say a 4th employee remains in the hospital. According to his family, he is still in critical condition. This morning, the prison continues to be on lockdown. The 4 inmates involved have been charged with 2.
No, I don't think I'm crazy, no.
And you do know the difference between right and wrong?
Yes.
So you know
there's a different name for a death, but yes.
And Michael Brady says he had a hand in each of the 4 Pasquotank correctional employees who were 2017.
I'm up here to tell the truth. You can ask me anything you want. I'm gonna tell the truth. How it was, whether it hurts me, whether it helps me. I don't care about that.
Sometimes the truth was hard to hear. Brady told the jury about his plan to escape and the fact that no one was going to stand in his way.
at the end of the day, escape versus these people's lives, you chose escape.
Yes.
Yeah, because your freedom meant more than their lives.
Yes.
Escape attempt at the Pasquotank Correctional Institution could learn if they'll face the death penalty.
This morning, Pasquotank prosecutors are expected to discuss the case against the inmates allegedly involved in that deadly ambush.
In addition to today's hearing, a grand jury will also meet separately to discuss the case. By this time tomorrow morning, we may learn if the inmates will be indicted once again, despite already facing murder and other felony charges. Police say these 4 inmates set a fire at the prison back in October. According to state officials, the inmates then tried to escape the facility but failed to leave the prison grounds. During the chaos, 4 employees died. Several others were also hurt and hospitalized. In October, the inmates were indicted on several other charges.
We're following breaking news out of North Carolina. An inmate escaped from Pasquotank Correctional Institute. 13 News Now confirmed Devonta Respers escaped from the minimum security facility around 10 this morning, and he is still out there.
In Eastern Carolina, Pasquotank County Sheriff's Office says deputies responded to the scene at Pasquotank Correctional Institution this morning, just before 1 a.m. in reference to an inmate being stabbed several times. Pasquotank Camden EMS was already on the scene assessing the victim, identified as 38-year-old inmate Jamal Griffin. He had 18 superficial lacerations from the assault on his head, shoulders, hands, and legs, according to the Sheriff's Office.
Pasquotank Correctional Institution is a close custody prison in Elizabeth City that became the site of one of the deadliest prison incidents in North Carolina's history. On October 12, 2017, inmates at Pasquotank CEI attempted a brazen escape from the facility's sewing plant, leading to a massacre of prison staff. 4 prison workers met their demise during this failed breakout, the darkest day on record for North Carolina's prisons. The slain employees were attacked with hammers and scissors as prisoners tried to flee through a fire the inmates had set. The escape attempt was ultimately foiled at the prison fence, and none of the perpetrators made it out. However, the toll was horrific. In addition to the 4 employees, several others were seriously injured in what officials described as a horror scene inside the sewing shop. The Pasquotank tragedy exposed critical systemic failures, especially severe staffing shortages and security lapses. A subsequent federal investigation by the National Institute of Corrections found the prison was so understaffed. At the time, about 25% of Pasquotank's correctional jobs were vacant, meaning 1 in 4 positions was empty. To keep the facility running, remaining staff were working excessive overtime and neglecting safety protocols. According to the NIC report, tools and weapons in the sewing plant were not properly tracked, doors were left unlocked, and inmates roamed without supervision in restricted areas. Basic security steps, like metal detector checks and strip searches when inmates left the workshop, were done only about 20% of the time. In the aftermath, state officials acknowledged that Pasquotank CEI had effectively been a powder keg. The facility was trying to maintain normal operations with a 25% staffing deficiency, producing staff burnout, complacency, and shortcuts. The NIC evaluation concluded the Department of Public Safety convened expert panels and instituted new safety measures, such as issuing all prison staff stab-resistant vests and personal emergency alarm buttons. In addition, authorities temporarily closed several smaller minimum security prisons in 2018-2019 to shift resources and bolster staffing at the more dangerous close custody units. Even with these efforts, the legacy of Pasquotank's tragedy is a sobering one. Multiple inmates were prosecuted for the deletions. 2 of them have since been sentenced to death for their roles in the escape attempt. Perhaps the most important outcome was the spotlight it shone on North Carolina's prison staffing crisis. Officials testified that to adequately supervise the state's 36,000 inmates, they needed to hire and train at least 1,300 more correctional officers on top of filling existing vacancies. Pasquotank taught the state a painful lesson. Understaffed prisons are unsafe prisons. Without enough well-trained officers, even a facility that was only 80% full, 725 inmates housed out of a 900 capacity at the time, can descend into chaos and violence. Pasquotank's darkest day led to soul-searching and some reforms, but many challenges remain in preventing such horrors from happening again.
Is one of North Carolina's newest maximum security prisons, a facility built for maximum control. Officers here keep an iron grip on some of the most dangerous inmates in the state. But even in the tightest prison, convicts find ways to get around the system. And when they get a foothold, the consequences can be deadly.
We're not used to inmates sending our staff out to the hospital.
This is where officers and inmates strive for total control.
They're going to make the non-gang members pay rent to live there, which could be anywhere from $5 a week to $100 a month. And they'll pay it off in canteen, or they'll have their families, extort their family, have them send money and put it in their account. So it's an ongoing thing to try to stay on top.
An officer at the Alexander County Correctional Institution was assaulted Saturday night. The officer's name has still not been released, but the North Carolina Department of Public Safety is investigating. According to the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, around 8 o'clock Saturday night, inmate Richard Lennox assaulted a correctional officer at Alexander Correctional Institution by punching him. The officer was taken to an outside medical facility where he was evaluated and released. The incident happened in the hallway near a housing area when the inmate refused to follow the officer's orders. There were no injuries to the inmate or other staff members.
Alexander Correctional Institution, a high-security prison in Taylorsville, became infamous after the 2014 death of an inmate named Michael Anthony Kerr exposed severe failings in mental health care and inmate treatment. Kerr, a 54-year-old Army veteran serving time for a nonviolent offense, suffered from schizophrenia and had been held in solitary confinement at Alexander for over a month. In March 2014, he died while being transported to Central Prison's hospital, and an autopsy revealed he had literally died of thirst. The NC medical examiner determined Kerr succumbed to severe dehydration after extended isolation. The circumstances of Kerr's death were deeply disturbing. He had spent 35 days in an isolation cell with his mental illness effectively untreated. According to investigative reports, guards had placed him on a punitive Nutriloaf diet, and after he repeatedly clogged his toilet, they cut off his access to water days before his death. Because he was kept handcuffed behind his back for the last 5 days, Kerr could not even use his hands to drink from his cell sink. Fellow inmates later reported that Kerr lay unresponsive in his own waste for days, growing weaker and delirious. When officers finally came to take the gravely ill man to the hospital, they found the lock on his handcuffs encrusted with feces. They had to cut the cuffs off his swollen wrists. Shortly after, Michael Kerr was pronounced dead from dehydration. He had essentially been tortured through neglect, dying alone in filth and shackles. Unsurprisingly, the Kerr case led to public outrage and internal reckoning at Alexander. In the immediate investigation, 7 employees, a captain, 4 nurses, a staff psychologist, and another nurse who resigned, were ousted for their roles in Kerr's improper care. Ultimately, over 24 staff were disciplined statewide, and 9 were fired, including the acting warden, for negligence or misconduct related to the incident. While no criminal charges were filed, the Department of Public Safety took the extraordinary step of settling a $2.5 million lawsuit with Kerr's family in 2015. The settlement did not admit liability, but the state issued an apology and pledged reforms. Among the changes were new training and screening for handling mentally ill inmates, as well as policy revisions for inmates in solitary and medical distress. The tragedy at Alexander Correctional highlights the dire state of mental health services in some North Carolina prisons. Kerr's schizophrenia went untreated for at least 6 months, and his death showed how solitary confinement can turn deadly without proper care. Unfortunately, other incidents of inmate neglect and inadequate health care have occurred in North Carolina's prisons, including high suicide rates and delayed medical attention in multiple facilities. Alexander history now serves as a cautionary tale that worst prison conditions are not only about violence, they can also be about callous indifference to human life. The hope is that lessons learned from Kerr's death have spurred improvements in how prisons handle inmates with serious mental illness to prevent such a needless loss of life from happening again. Granville Correctional Institution, located in Butner, is another facility often mentioned among North Carolina's most challenging prisons. Formerly known as Polk Correctional, this prison houses close custody male offenders and includes a high-security Supermax unit for the state's most violent and assaultive offenders. Granville is unique in that it also serves as one of the system's youth offender facilities, but its day-to-day reality for those in the Supermax unit is bleak. Reports from inside Granville prison detail extreme staffing shortages and harsh conditions that mirror the problems seen elsewhere, compounded by a large population of inmates with mental health issues. In the special high-security unit at Granville, conditions approach total isolation. Internal logs showed that on some shifts, only 2 or 3 officers were supervising the entire unit, which is supposed to have at least 8 officers on duty. This acute understaffing forces the few staff on duty to work overtime double shifts and makes it nearly impossible to monitor each cell. Officers have reportedly worked 16-hour days in stretches of 20 days in a row to cover gaps. Even with such Herculean efforts, there simply aren't enough eyes on the cell blocks. Prisoners in solitary can go hours or days without an officer visually checking on them, which is especially dangerous given Granville's inmate population. Over half of the prisoners in Granville's control unit are classified as mentally ill. Many suffer serious psychiatric disorders or have developed them due to prolonged isolation. Yet, because of staffing shortfalls, required guard rounds often aren't done, and mental health care is minimal, sometimes amounting to nothing more than a brief conversation through a cell door. Advocates have likened Granville's Supermax environment to a pressure cooker. Inmates on the unit have no way to call for help. The cell intercoms were disconnected by a previous warden, and must hope an officer happens by if they are in distress. Several incidents of self-harm and neglected medical needs have been reported. It's a vicious cycle. Mentally ill inmates deteriorate in isolation without treatment, and overworked officers, often exhausted, sometimes respond with force or neglect. There have been allegations of abusive conduct by some staff in this unit, as well as suicides that went unnoticed until it was too late. The combination of dangerous inmates, sparse staffing, and mental health crises at Granville makes it one of the toughest assignments for any correctional employee and one of the direst settings for inmates. While it may not grab headlines like a riot or escape, the daily conditions in Granville's high-security wing arguably represent some of the worst treatment of inmates in the state, especially for those struggling with mental illness.
More than a year after reports of inmates at Red Onion State Prison burning themselves due to mistreatment and inhumane conditions, the Office of the State Inspector General found the allegations to be inconclusive or unsubstantiated. These claims date back to 2024, when the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus called on state leaders to address, quote, degrading and inhumane conditions, claiming 12 inmates set themselves on fire. The Virginia Department of Corrections saying only 7 inmates burned themselves after tampering with electrical outlets.
Julian Leon Mitchell was charged with aggravated murder. Mitchell's accused of killing Jawel Legendre on August 24, 2023. Legendre was found unresponsive by Virginia Department of Corrections staff. He was then transported to the Dickinson Community Hospital and pronounced dead.
New at 11, an inmate at the Red Onion State Prison in Pound, Virginia has died after an apparent attack by his cellmate. The 47-year-old inmate was pronounced dead at the Dickinson County Community Hospital shortly before 7 o'clock tonight. According to the Department of Correction, the inmate was in general population serving a life sentence without parole for first-degree.
Red Onion State Prison is Virginia's best-known Supermax close custody facility. Opened in 1998 to hold the state's highest control population in an extremely restrictive design. In 2024-2025, outside advocates and families raised renewed alarms about worsening conditions and prolonged lockdowns, while Vedic records obtained by Virginia public media show officials reviewed a cluster of complaints in late 2024 and reported finding no staff misconduct. Because Red Onion functions as a destination for the most high-risk individuals, including people removed from other prisons after serious violence. Public reporting tends to focus less on specific gang turf and more on system-wide tension inside a Supermax environment, high control, limited movement, and recurring allegations about use of force and unrest. Open source details on specific gang incidents there are limited, but the facility's reputation comes from its role as the endpoint for the hardest to manage cases in Virginia's system.
According to the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, a grand jury has returned multiple indictments in an alleged attack on 3 Virginia Department of Corrections correctional officers at Wallens Ridge State Prison. That incident happened back in May when investigators say 3 corrections officers were attacked by 6 gang-affiliated inmates at the prison.
The 30-year-old is 11 years into his 26-and-a-half-year sentence. Since Turner was shot 1 week ago, Gilmore says it's been hard to get his medical records or talk to him, at times not knowing if he's alive.
Virginia Department of Corrections tells 8 News they're investigating a, quote, use of force incident that happened last Monday. Gilmore says his son was shot after crossing what's called the red line when trying to use the phones. Inmates are not to cross the red line without permission. Gilmore now says no one has heard from his son since Friday. The last time they spoke, Turner was having a hard time recalling what happened before or after the shooting and complained about pain behind his eyes and the back of his head. Gilmore says every time he tries to get answers, prison officials tell him conflicting things.
The Virginia Department of Corrections has identified the inmate who died in an alleged attack at the Wallens Ridge State Prison in Big Stone Gap, Virginia.
Officials say an inmate was this afternoon following an apparent attack by another inmate. The 47-year-old inmate, who was serving time for multiple sexual offenses, was pronounced dead shortly before 1 o'clock. The alleged assailant is currently serving a life sentence for murder.
Joe Bentley is a former corrections sergeant with more than 20 years of experience with the Virginia Department of Corrections.
This was a planned attack to hurt some officers. I'm definitely not going to say that they did not do their very best, and probably better than most people could have.
Wallens Ridge State Prison has a reputation for high-level violence largely because it houses people who require maximum control, including validated gang affiliates. A major example was the May 2, 2025 attack, in which 6 gang-affiliated inmates reported as 5 confirmed MS-13 members, and 1 affiliated with Sereno 13 assaulted 3 correctional officers, with 2 officers stabbed multiple times. Prosecutors later pursued a sweeping case tied to that incident, underscoring how quickly a high-security unit can turn into a flashpoint when organized groups move together. Beyond that headline event, Wallens Ridge is frequently described as operating under heavy-pressure staffing strain, lockdowns, and recurring violence that doesn't always make major headlines. Put simply, Wallens Ridge is seen as one of Virginia's most dangerous state prisons because it often receives individuals who can't be managed elsewhere. And the 2025 officer stabbing case shows the real-world risk when gang structures and high custody conditions collide.
Tonight, a staff member and dog are recovering after getting stabbed by an inmate at Sussex 1 State Prison. The Virginia Department of Corrections says this happened inside a housing unit last night. Both are expected to be okay.
Stabbed a corrections officer in a Sussex County prison. In an email to our sister station in Richmond, the Virginia Department of Corrections says the injuries are non-life-threatening. It happened this afternoon at Sussex State Prison.
You're looking at a painting of 5-year-old Raivan, a Belgian Malinois who worked with the Virginia Department of Corrections for most of his life. That career cut short when he was stabbed and kicked to death on April 2nd by incarcerated MS-13 gang members. He died defending his partner and an inmate. While Raivan was a hard worker, a vital protector, and law enforcement officer, Virginia Department of Corrections statewide K-9 coordinator Matthew Bernaco reminds us he was also a happy-go-lucky furry friend.
Sussex State Prison is considered high risk largely because it has documented gang-linked violence inside the facility. A major example happened on April 2, 2024, when MS-13 affiliated inmates carried out an assault inside a housing unit that resulted in the death of a Veda K9 while the dog was protecting its handler. The case became a clear public marker that MS-13 influence isn't just outside the walls. It can shape serious incidents inside Sussex too. Sussex's danger profile is reinforced by the broader pattern Virginia has flagged in related investigations. Some of the same gang-affiliated individuals have been connected to later violence after transfers within the system, showing how conflicts and affiliations can travel between facilities. Taken together, Sussex's reputation comes from maximum custody conditions plus proven gang presence, where disputes can escalate fast and carry high stakes for staff and incarcerated people alike.
Sources tell our Laura French that 3 inmates were stabbed earlier this morning. That source tells Laura that one of the victims was taken to VCU Medical Center with deep cuts to his left abdomen, both arms, and the back of his head. The second victim had cuts on his head, and a third had cuts on his hand.
Almost 3 weeks since Nassim Rulak escaped the custody of 2 Greensville correctional officers. You may remember our previous coverage. He escaped while being seen at St. Mary's Hospital in Henrico, and he's not been seen since. The only sign of him was a wet hospital gown found in a nearby home, indicating a break-in.
I was going to clubs, outside. I didn't have no mask on or hiding into my house. Because when I was free, when I escaped, I felt like I freed myself. You feel me? Like I didn't feel like no fugitive. At the end, I don't really know what happened, honestly, but somebody turned me into the marshal.
In August of 2023, Rolak was serving a 13-year sentence at Greensville Correctional for aggravated malicious wounding and other charges. After he was taken to St. Mary's, he escaped the supervision of 2 VA DOC security officers.
It was kind of like doing crazy, like sticking all kinds of tubes in me and like plucking me and putting tubes in me. And I was just like, yeah, like I ain't about to keep doing it. They won't stop. Once I realized like I'm not in a secure place, then I thought like they don't know who I am, and then once I realized, I was like, yeah, it's over.
Somebody dropped the ball.
Alonzo Wilds was in prison because he stabbed 2 teenage boys, according to this article from the Winchester Star. He was set to be discharged from the stabbing charges, but according to a spokesperson for the Department of Corrections, Wilds had a detainer for a pending federal probation violation involving drugs and should have been released to a federal officer, but instead he was released to his wife. DOC spokesperson said they are investigating what went wrong, but because of the mistake, Wilds made it to Ranson, West Virginia, where police there arrested him for drug possession and obstruction of justice. During the arrest, they realized he was wanted on a federal warrant.
Also new at midday, there was a major drug smuggling bust in a rather unusual place. Investigators say they seized more than $300,000 in drugs that were being smuggled into the Greenville Correctional Center. That's in Jarrett, Virginia. So 3 people were arrested, including a correctional officer.
A Greensville Correctional Facility employee was found dead inside her car in the facility's parking lot today. State police found the woman unresponsive around 8:30 this morning. Police say her body has been taken to the office of the chief medical examiner in Richmond, and also say the death does not appear to be suspicious.
A father with ties to Charlottesville is dead. That's what the family of the 42-year-old inmate tells me. While the Virginia Department of Corrections has not identified him, his family says Prince Brooks leaves behind a 9-year-old son.
The Virginia Department of Corrections is investigating an inmate's death at Greensville Correctional Center, who was allegedly killed by a cellmate. Officials say the attack happened just after 3 a.m. In a statement, the Virginia Department of Corrections said an inmate was found on top of their unresponsive cellmate.
That inmate died Saturday afternoon after being found unresponsive, but not after several attempts to save him. Sources say just after 3:30 Saturday afternoon, staff responded to a call for a lifeless body in a cell at the Greensville Correctional Center. I'm told 3 doses of Narcan were administered, but the male inmate died at the prison. He's the 4th inmate in the last 3 months to die at the facility. While the cause of Saturday's death is still under investigation, the Virginia Department of Corrections said 3 men who died between July 30th and 31st overdosed. Under the
Greensville Correctional Center remains one of Virginia's higher-risk state prisons because of its size, documented gang-linked violence, and recurring contraband pressure. In October 2024, Veda confirmed that 2 correctional officers were stabbed inside the facility by inmate Axel Wilfredo Ortiz Garcia, who officials identified as a confirmed MS-13 affiliate temporarily housed at Greensville due to a court order. Both officers were hospitalized and later released. The incident underscored how high-security gang affiliates can carry conflict with them across facilities, creating volatility even after transfers within the system. The prison has also faced significant contraband challenges. In March 2025, Vedic announced a multi-agency smuggling investigation tied to Greensville that led to the arrest of a correctional officer and 2 outside associates. Authorities reported seizing more than $300,000 worth of drugs by prison market value, including fentanyl, meth, buprenorphine, Mary, and other contraband, along with a stolen firearm during related enforcement actions. Officials emphasize that prison value pricing reflects how lucrative internal trafficking can be, which in turn fuels debt, coercion, and instability behind the walls. Earlier enforcement actions have also highlighted security strain at the facility, including large-scale shakedowns that recovered suspected narcotics, improvised weapons, and illicit cell phones. As one of the largest prisons in Virginia, Greensville's population size alone increases operational pressure, and when gang affiliations, internal drug markets, and staffing challenges intersect, the result is a facility that frequently appears in discussions of violence and high-risk prison environments within the state system. Taken together, these prisons show how violence in a state system.
His family says the voice you hear screaming belongs to 22-year-old Jameel Parsons, an inmate at Northern State Prison in Newark. They say they haven't heard from him for months, and after seeing what they believe is him being pulled down the steps, they're worried.
Videotape officials don't want you to see. It shows an everyday interaction between officers and inmates at a New Jersey prison. Just getting a camera inside is a huge security breach, getting the tape out even tougher. You might find it tough to watch.
What you about to witness is not only a rare look at what goes on within one of the many prisons within America, but what you're about to witness is also a rare look at what goes on within one of the many solitary confinement units within the prisons of America. The depths of prison, the bowels of prison, the bowels of life. This is about as low in life as you could possibly get.
Opened in 1987 to ease overcrowding at Trenton, Northern State Prison looms over Newark's west side, tucked along the highway. The massive square facility, marked by a central high-rise tower, has earned a reputation for constant tension. Inmates joke that its curved entrance looks like a launch pad for despair. Northern holds offenders at every custody level, from open dorms to maximum security lockdowns, but across the board, danger thrives. Contraband flows steadily. Cell phones, weapons, even homemade water pumps. Guards routinely uncover hidden weapons caches, and the underground economy keeps anxiety levels high. The risks are real and often deadly. In December 2024, the New Jersey Attorney General's office launched an investigation into the death of 46-year-old David Silva, who died in the infirmary nearly a week after a violent encounter with correctional officers. Meanwhile, past Latin King, Hit Squad plots revealed Northern was a planned site for a deadly gang ambush in 2020, one that DOC agents narrowly prevented. Ombudsman reports consistently ranked Northern alongside Trenton and South Woods as one of the state's most volatile prisons. In just the past year, hundreds of inmates reported assaults, brutality, and violent clashes. Watchdogs have detailed claims of flooded punitive cells, drug labs built into light sockets, and guards who sometimes lose control of their own units. Northern State runs like a powder keg, a constant, high-pressure grind where any spark, a search, a fight, a missed warning can ignite full-blown chaos.
No justice! No peace! Calls for justice outside Southwood State Prison here in Bridgeton after disturbing claims of inmate mistreatment. Social advocates and family members say a recent water outage at the facility forced prisoners to live in degrading conditions for days.
What we were told, because I didn't actually get inside to see it, was that when the water went down, that the inmates were required to relieve themselves in plastic bags and things of this nature. There were some porta potty brought in, like one for the whole institution, which that doesn't work.
Sitting off a rural turnpike near Vineland, Southwood State Prison is New Jersey's largest correctional facility, housing the biggest inmate population in the state. On the surface, it looks modern. Rows of numbered concrete buildings, new guard towers, and heavy security fencing. But inside, violence simmers just beneath the surface. Southwoods holds a mix of maximum and medium security prisoners, and its restorative housing unit meant for segregation has earned a darker reputation. Former inmates describe it as a gladiator pit where fights erupt under the watch of guards. In late 2022, the state ombudsman received alarming reports from inmates alleging that officers in the RHU were encouraging fights, pushing prisoners to attack each other. By January 2023, 5 complaints were forwarded to Internal Affairs, citing security staff using excessive force and encouraging violence. Although the Department of Corrections denied the existence of any fight club, the accounts from behind the walls told a different story, one of fear, manipulation, and constant threat. One former inmate called the RHU a snake pit, where even a wrong head count could make someone a target. Corruption has only deepened the dangers. In 2018, a senior corrections officer was indicted for smuggling opioid painkillers into the prison in exchange for cash, using his keys and position to bypass security. His arrest exposed vulnerabilities not just in contraband control, but in the entire culture of trust inside the prison. And he wasn't alone. Southwoods has seen multiple staff arrests for smuggling and misconduct in recent years. Inmates at Southwoods don't just fear each other, they often fear the very people tasked with protecting them. Overcrowding and chronic understaffing mean basic routines, like walking to the chow hall or yard, can quickly turn violent. Watchdogs keep Southwoods under close scrutiny, but inside, it remains a powder keg, a place where any wrong move can ignite chaos.
What's your name? My name, Bridget. Bridget, what's your name now? What's your name now? Bridget. Say it loud. You're happy to be Bridget. Bridget. Look at me and tell me your name. Look at me in my eyes. That's right, that's right. Look at me, turn all the way around. What's your name? Bridget. Who the f***? Who you belong to today, right? Don't make me break the mother. That's right, that's right, that's right. Stick your tongue in his mouth. Who you belong to, you mother, like you do. Now turn around and pay attention.
10 years ago, on the night before Thanksgiving, inmates seized control of 2 Rahway State Prison wings. The superintendent and 5 guards were taken hostage. From a command post near the prison, former Governor William Cahill negotiated an agreement with the inmates. The riot ended 24 hours after it began. The inmates had stabbed and beaten up the warden, but no one else was seriously hurt.
About an hour north of Trenton sits East Jersey State Prison, better known by its old name, Rahway State. The sprawling facility, marked by its towering dome, once a chapel and endless rows of cell blocks, was once considered a model of modern incarceration. But years of overcrowding, budget cuts, and a hardening inmate population have stripped away that image. Rahway now houses some of New Jersey's most dangerous offenders, including those in its special treatment unit. The general population wings are filled with inmates serving long bids for violent crimes like robbery and assault. Inside, the atmosphere is tense and overarmed. Cells often remain closed even during daytime hours, just to keep rival factions apart. One former guard described long corridors where men shout threats through steel doors, each waiting for the smallest opportunity to strike if a guard slips up. That tension turned into real violence on New Year's Eve in 2016. Correctional officer Daniel Campione was escorting inmates when one prisoner launched a sudden attack, punching him repeatedly in the head. Campione had to be hospitalized with serious injuries, and his recovery stretched for months. It was just one example of the kind of explosive violence Rahway officers face regularly. Rahway's reputation for stabbings and hidden weapons is well earned. Inmates have long manufactured shanks in secret, and gang sets like the Bloods, Latin Kings, and others control cell blocks like mini territories. Officers know better than to move alone through a unit, and if they do, they stay on constant high alert. Even minor disputes can escalate fast, sometimes ending in bloodshed. Violence at Rahway has even had ripple effects beyond its walls. In one grim case, an inmate who had previously stabbed an officer at Rahway later deleted a correctional sergeant in Trenton State Prison. Incidents like these, a dangerous Rahway's population remains. Adding to the complexity, Rahway's grounds also include the Adult Diagnostic and Treatment Center, a high-security prison for New Jersey's most serious sex offenders. It has its own fences, towers, and strict surveillance protocols. Inmates' families describe the environment as almost military, constant monitoring, strict movements, and the sound of shouting traveling easily down dim corridors. Though it may not draw headlines as often as Trenton or South Woods, East Jersey State Prison remains one of New Jersey's most dangerous lockups, a place where violence is always just a breath away.
Two female inmates at a supposedly all-women's prison in New Jersey have just become pregnant. You wonder how that happened. Well, it turns out those women had sexual encounters with another inmate who was a biological man passing as a woman. Now, some people predicted that this would happen, and they were laughed at, mocked, and attacked as bigots.
Though the story that's happening in New Jersey is obviously horrible for so many reasons. We need to not have men being housed in women's prisons. So the entire medical establishment in the United States has been captured by so-called trans ideology. And what I really want all Americans across the political spectrum to understand is that trans is not a civil rights movement to protect a marginalized community of people. It is a multi-trillion-dollar industry that is...
A violent incident last year at New Jersey's troubled Edna Mann Correctional Facility for Women has resulted in indictments against 14 corrections officers. A grand jury yesterday voted to indict the officers in connection with the actions that occurred in the early hours of January 12, 2021. The state attorney general's office says on that date, inmates were forcibly removed from their cells. Some were beaten. 2 women were severely injured. The AG's office says the officers took these actions following escalating tensions with some inmates.
3 prison guards are now facing misconduct charges for a violent attack on at least 6 female inmates. New Jersey's Attorney General says one of the women was punched 28 times and claims the guards tried to cover up the attack at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women by filing false reports.
Years ago, Governor Murphy ordered the beleaguered Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women to close following numerous allegations of sexual abuse and violence against the women incarcerated there. Well, that closing process has begun after nearly 75 women were moved to a satellite location last year.
Even women's prisons aren't immune to dark chapters, and Edna Mahan Correctional Facility proves it. Nestled on the grounds of an old asylum in rural Hunterdon County, Edna Mahan houses New Jersey's female inmates in a mix of crumbling brick dorms and newer concrete blocks. Violence and misconduct have haunted the prison for years, but what happened in January 2021 pushed it into the national spotlight. According to court documents, tactical officers stormed a cell block without warning, dragging women into hallways and beating them mercilessly. Security footage captured the assaults, guards punching, kicking, and even using gas against inmates locked in their own cells. Prosecutors later indicted 15 corrections officers, charging them with assault, misconduct, and conspiracy. 2 women were seriously injured. State officials made clear this wasn't a sanctioned use of force. It was a brutal attack on people already under state protection. The state has a responsibility to protect individuals in our custody, the Attorney General said at the time, vowing that those responsible would face justice. But the 2021 beating was just the latest scandal. Before that, at least 14 officers and supervisors had already been charged with sexual assault, abuse, or misconduct against inmates. The result is a prison steeped in fear. Women inside Edna Mahan often see guards not as protectors, but as potential threats. Activists point out that conditions remain grim: frequent understaffing, violence between inmates, and a general atmosphere of mistrust. The tactics inside Edna often seem more vindictive than rehabilitative, one advocate said, a sentiment echoed in the lawsuits, criminal charges, and countless inmate complaints. At Edna Mahan, the real danger doesn't just come from rival inmates, it comes from the very people paid to enforce the rules. For New Jersey, it's a painful reminder that when power goes unchecked, even locked doors can't protect those trapped inside.
A manhunt is in progress for escaped inmate Arthur Buckle. The 38-year-old New Jersey inmate who killed his girlfriend's 10-month-old baby 20 years ago escaped from prison Tuesday, just weeks before he was due for parole on separate charges. Arthur Buckle appears to be heading north up the coast after busting out of a Winslow Township-based satellite location of Bayside State Prison. He was spotted Wednesday morning at a CVS in Barnegat Township, about 50 miles northeast from where he escaped.
Bayside State Prison, a quieter name compared to New Jersey's notorious facilities, still has its own dark history. Located near Cape May, this medium-security prison, originally a farm complex, has seen violence and corruption that shattered any illusion of safety. In November 2024, federal court records exposed 2 disturbing incidents from late 2019. In one, a group of inmates beat another prisoner to death while correctional officer Joshua Hand stood by and did nothing. Days later, the same officer ignored a fellow guard viciously assaulting an inmate with a broomstick. Prosecutors called it a blatant abuse of power. Hand pleaded guilty to violating the prisoner's civil rights and was sentenced to 20 months behind bars for depriving the victims of their right not to be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. The cases sent a clear message. Even New Jersey's lesser-known prisons were not immune to brutality and systemic failure. Bayside also struggled with rampant contraband smuggling. In 2018, a sergeant admitted to taking bribes to sneak H and other drugs into the prison yard. Like its larger counterparts, Bayside remains a battleground for gangs, from East Coast organized crime families to smaller cell block crews, who maintain control through fear and violence. Veteran guards talk of midnight searches for razor blades hidden in pillows and chocolates laced with Fenty. Inmates whisper about a so-called prison judiciary, an underground system where prisoners enforce their own brutal rules, fueled by deep distrust of the staff. Though Bayside is set to be merged into South Woods and Southern State by 2025, its stories remain etched in memory. Families of former inmates still recount fights breaking out in the dining halls, ambushes in the kitchens, and a constant sense of danger where survival often depended on who you knew or how fast you could fight back. Trenton's New Jersey State Prison stands like a battered fortress. Built in 1836, its thick sandstone walls and looming guard towers still dominate the neighborhood. Inside, narrow corridors from the original 19th century fortress clash with newer maximum security wings, but the atmosphere remains the same, tense and dangerous. Rumors spread fast, alliances form and break overnight, and even mundane work details can turn bloody. In 2020, Latin Kings members inside the prison organized a hit squad, brutally attacking another inmate during yard time and leaving him with a traumatic brain injury. Corrections intelligence later uncovered plans for a second assault at Newark's Northern State Prison, foiled only when officers moved the target. Violence isn't limited to inmates. Over the decades, correctional officers have also been targets. One infamous case from the early 1970s saw a sergeant fatally stabbed while guarding the mess hall, a story that still echoes in the minds of today's officers. Guards remain on constant knife watch, scanning both inmates and each other. Staff brutality complaints are also common. According to the state ombudsman, hundreds of prisoners file reports each year alleging beatings by guards and assaults by other inmates. Lockdowns are frequent, tensions explode over small disputes, and the stone hallways often echo with shouts and fights. Trenton's New Jersey State Prison is a place where survival is uncertain and danger never sleeps.
Now new this morning, a 43-year-old prisoner stabbed to death at Jessup Correctional Institution. Police are telling the Sun that the inmate, John O'Sullivan, was found lying on the floor and bleeding by correctional officers around 10 o'clock Sunday morning. Officers had been responding to a fight. They say they saw several prisoners walking away from that victim. Those prisoners have now been taken into custody for questioning.
A man has been sentenced to 39 months in federal prison for racketeering at the Jessup Correctional Institution. 40-year-old Chaz Crisco conspired with former corrections officers, inmates, and people on the outside to smuggle in contraband that included narcotics, alcohol, tobacco, and cell phones.
A Baltimore County man gets 3 years in prison after being convicted of helping run a contraband smuggling operation at the Jessup Correctional Institution. Prosecutors say 40-year-old Chaz Crisco and a number of others bribed guards at that facility who smuggled drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and cell phones.
Maryland State Police say investigators are looking into the homicide of an inmate in Jessup. Police say 27-year-old Nicholas Del Fosse was serving time for burglary and pronounced dead yesterday afternoon.
Jessup correctional inmate is now sentenced to 35 additional years in prison. His cellmate, 31-year-old Joseph Patrick Soule, was already serving a 30-year sentence for dealer stabbing him 66 times in 2014. Corrections officers say an object was blocking a window into the cell. Soule initially refused to move it, and when they entered the cell, they found his cellmate, David Stevenson, lying in a pool of blood.
Located in Jessup, Maryland, the current Jessup Correctional Institution stands on the grounds of what was once the infamous Maryland House of Correction, a prison so violent it earned the nickname the Cut. Originally opened in 1879, the House of Correction developed a brutal reputation over the decades, plagued by severe overcrowding, understaffing, and unrelenting inmate violence. It endured multiple riots, including a major uprising in 1972 during a wave of statewide prison unrest. One of its most shocking moments came in August 1979, when 30 inmates escaped by cutting through cell bars and perimeter fencing in one of the largest prison breaks in Maryland's history. Though all were eventually recaptured, the incident underscored the dangerous and chaotic conditions inside the facility. Violence wasn't limited to inmates. In July 2006, Officer David McGinn was brutally stabbed to death by inmates while on duty, a tragedy that prompted the state to shut down the aging and volatile prison in 2007. In its place now stands JCI, a modern maximum security institution meant to offer tighter control, but violence still lingers. The facility houses many of the state's most dangerous and long-term offenders, including high-ranking gang members. In 2016, JCI witnessed a deadly gang-related attack when members of the Aryan Brotherhood stabbed a rival gang leader from Dead Man Incorporated 54 times inside his cell, retaliating for an earlier dispute. The attack, caught on surveillance cameras, was a stark reminder of the deep-rooted gang presence within the prison. From its violent legacy as the Cut to its current status as a hotbed for organized gang activity, Jessup Correctional Institution remains one of the most dangerous prisons in Maryland.
Oh, it sure is. You know, not long ago, this jail made a lot of headlines. You'll remember that several dozen inmates and correctional officers were convicted in this huge corruption scheme. And at the time, then Governor Martin O'Malley vowed to root out corruption. Well, now the 11 News I-team has learned that current Governor Larry Hogan plans to shut this male detention center down sometime this summer. That announcement will come later today. We know that this jail was built back in 1859. It's the only jail in the country that's run by the state. The detention center currently houses 750 inmates. The facility's infrastructure is crumbling. It dates back before the Civil War. It was just 2 years ago, back in 2013, when 24 people were federally indicted for smuggling drugs and cell phones to gang members who were running a criminal enterprise from behind bars. The ringleader in that case, Tavon White, also accused of having sex with 4 corrections officers. In response, Martin O'Malley created a task force to cut down on the fraternization between inmates and staff. He also implemented new technology to keep the cell phones from working inside the jail. Now, the 11 News I-team has learned through sources that Governor Hogan planning to shut this place down.
For decades, the Baltimore City Detention Center stood as one of the most dangerous and chaotic jails in the country. Designed to hold pre-trial detainees, the facility was plagued by appalling conditions, extreme overcrowding, and unchecked violence. But by the early 2010s, things took a darker turn, not just due to inmate violence, but because of complete internal corruption. In 2013, a sweeping federal investigation revealed that the Black Guerrilla family gang had effectively seized control of the jail from within. A total of 25 individuals, including 13 correctional officers, were indicted in a massive racketeering case. The gang's leader, Tavon White, was recorded on a wiretap claiming full control over the facility, boasting, "I make every final call in this jail, and nothing goes past me." Female correctional officers were accused of smuggling in drugs, cell phones, and tobacco, and some even became pregnant by inmates. Authorities estimated White alone made up to $15,000 a month from the contraband trade. What emerged was a picture of a jail transformed into a criminal enterprise, where gang members punished rivals, intimidated non-cooperative staff, and operated with virtual impunity. Meanwhile, basic infrastructure at Baltimore City Detention Center crumbled. Inmates were packed into deteriorating buildings with no air conditioning, leading to unbearable heat, unsanitary conditions, and constant tension. The jail saw countless stabbings, violent assaults, and security failures, including a high-profile escape where a detainee impersonated another inmate and simply walked out of the facility. The situation was so dire that in 2015, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan ordered the immediate closure of the men's detention center, calling it troubled and decrepit. However, even after its closure, the violence didn't end. Many of Baltimore City Detention Center detainees were moved to the Baltimore pretrial complex, where in August 2015, a riot erupted. Detainees barricaded themselves inside a housing unit and attacked responding officers, leaving 8 officers and 6 inmates injured. The collapse of Baltimore City Detention Center became a symbol of how deep gang control and systemic failure had become in Maryland's corrections system. Former inmates described the environment as a mix of oppressive boredom and sudden bursts of violence. Though its doors are now closed, the legacy of the Baltimore City Detention Center remains, a cautionary tale of what happens when corruption, neglect, and violence go unchecked behind
prison
the walls.
Inmate and a suspect has now been identified. State police say 28-year-old Robert Warren died Monday in his cell at the North Branch Correctional Institution in Cumberland.
State police are investigating the death of an inmate who was found unresponsive this weekend in his cell at a state prison in Allegheny County. The inmate is identified as 27-year-old Dominic Anderson. He was an inmate at the North Branch Correctional Institution in Cumberland. Police said during the evening of February the 23rd, a correctional officer was conducting cell checks and found Anderson lying on the floor of his cell where he was housed with another inmate.
North Branch Correctional Institution is Maryland's modern-day Supermax prison, constructed in 2003 to house the state's most dangerous and high-risk inmates under the tightest security possible. Designed to replace the notorious and outdated Jessup House of Correction, North Branch Correctional Institution was built with advanced surveillance systems and strict inmate management protocols. But despite its high-tech infrastructure, the facility has been plagued by severe violence, particularly against staff, and continues to face critical challenges tied to chronic understaffing. North Branch Correctional Institution holds some of the most violent offenders in Maryland, including lifers, gang leaders, and inmates with extensive histories of assault and disruption. According to the Prison Guards Union, assaults on correctional officers occur on an almost daily basis. Union representatives have long raised alarms about unsafe working conditions, citing dangerously low staffing levels and outdated infrastructure that make it difficult to maintain order. Tony Sines, a union president representing correctional officers in the region, has repeatedly warned that North Branch Correctional Institution is severely understaffed and that officers are being pushed into increasingly dangerous situations with little support. He described the facility as housing the most dangerous offenders the state has. One of the most serious recent incidents occurred in November 2024 when a single inmate managed to ambush multiple officers in a calculated attack. 2 correctional officers were stabbed and 2 others injured before staff regained control. One officer suffered a life-threatening neck wound and had to be airlifted to a trauma hospital, an incident that sent shockwaves through the correctional community. While all the injured officers survived, the attack raised serious concerns about staffing shortages and security protocols, even within a facility designed for maximum control. Inmate-on-inmate violence has also persisted within North Branch Correctional Institution walls. Although less publicized, stabbings, assaults, and gang-related attacks occur regularly. With rival gang members from organizations such as the Black Guerrilla Family, MS-13, and Aryan Brotherhood often confined within the same facility, violent conflicts are inevitable. In 2013, an officer was stabbed by an inmate, triggering a shakeup in leadership. And in 2020, an inmate was found dead inside the facility in what investigators ruled a deletion. Yet another reminder that violence at North Branch Correctional Institution is not limited to clashes with staff. Despite its Supermax status and strict protocols, North Branch remains a powder keg. The combination of dangerous inmates, understaffing, and constant tension has made it one of the most perilous prison environments in Maryland. It was built to solve the problems of its predecessors, but in many ways, the North Branch Correctional Institution has inherited and magnified those same risks.
Maryland authorities over the weekend broke up an effort to deliver contraband into a prison using a drone.
Well, Jamie, fortunately, the prison staff and police both saw it coming before this drone could be launched. Its payload, drugs that were to be remotely dropped behind the fence. But this drone never made it off the ground. A brand new high-end top-dollar drone and remote with a payload of opiates in candy packaging and spice, all destined for special delivery.
Found in that vehicle were a drone which we believe was about to be used to deliver contraband into the Western Correctional Institute. Also in the vehicle was a handgun and various contraband.
Corrections officials say they had already developed information from both inside and outside the prison that such an attempt to fly contraband inside would occur in the weeks leading up to the bust.
It all happened at the Western Correctional Institution in Cumberland. According to police, Murray was serving a 9-year sentence since '07 for a drug conviction, a sentence the family says that ultimately took his life. For the family, all that's left are the memories, the letters, and photographs. Murray says they were told her brother, 30-year-old Darrell Murray, was found dead early Wednesday. But that, she says, was it. She only knew it was being investigated as a after her own online research.
2 Maryland prison workers are sent to the hospital after opening a letter that officials say was soaked in an unknown liquid. It happened at the Western Correctional Institution in Cumberland just after 10 yesterday morning. Authorities say a mailroom worker and correctional officer complained of irritation after opening that letter.
Western Correctional Institution, located in the rugged mountains of western Maryland, sits just next to North Branch Correctional Institution and shares much of its notoriety. Opened in the 1990s, Western Correctional Institution is a maximum security prison that houses a mix of medium and high security inmates, many of whom have been transferred from other facilities due to disciplinary issues. In practice, its inmate population is just as volatile and high risk as its neighbor, and the dangers inside are just as severe. One of the most pressing issues at Western Correctional Institution is a chronic staffing crisis. With a limited number of officers tasked with overseeing dangerous inmates, assaults and violent incidents have become alarmingly frequent. Union representatives have warned for years that the staffing levels are dangerously low, putting both officers and inmates at risk. Much like at North Branch, WCI correctional officers face regular attacks, and inmate-on-inmate violence is common in housing units, recreation yards, and other poorly supervised areas. The prison has seen several deadly incidents in recent years. In August 2024, a 23-year-old inmate named Marvin Brown was found dead in his cell with multiple puncture wounds, the apparent victim of a fatal attack by his cellmate. Authorities quickly launched a homicide investigation and identified another prisoner as the suspect. This was far from an isolated event. Other violent altercations have erupted in the outdoor yards, including one deadly incident where a group of inmates engaged in a brutal clash that resulted in another inmate's death. These events highlight the ongoing presence of gang conflicts within the prison. Rival groups often settle scores with homemade weapons in areas with minimal surveillance. Though Western Correctional Institution has not seen a major escape in recent years, there have been past security lapses that exposed vulnerabilities. Notably, a related incident from a nearby institution involved the 2006 deletion of Officer Jeffrey Roden, who was fatally shot during an inmate's escape attempt while at a hospital. That tragedy underscored systemic weaknesses in how dangerous inmates are supervised off-site, and similar risks persist across Western Maryland's correctional complexes. Inside Western Correctional Institution, contraband smuggling remains a problem, with some staff members suspected of aiding the flow of drugs and other banned items into the facility. Corruption concerns and understaffing have made it increasingly difficult to maintain order, especially as gang-affiliated inmates from urban centers like Baltimore and D.C. bring deep rivalries into the confined space. Former officers and inmates alike describe Western Correctional Institution as a pressure cooker, a remote, isolated facility filled with hardened individuals and staffed by a shrinking number of overworked guards. The prison's reputation for inmate deletions, brutal assaults, and dangerous instability has made it one of the most hazardous correctional institutions in Maryland.
For the last 3 years, multiple state and federal agencies have been investigating the smuggling ring at Eastern Correctional Institution.
What they involved was correctional officers taking bribes in return for bringing drugs, phones, and other contraband into the prison and providing those items to the inmates.
Officials say people on the outside would get the items to the COs. They would sneak the contraband past security in their hair, underwear, and internally. Then pass the narcotics, cell phones, porn videos, and other goods to the inmates who would distribute and sell them. Going rate for bringing a package inside the medium security prison was around $500, and the items were sold for a massive profit.
Maryland State Police are investigating after the death of a state prison inmate in Somerset County. On Friday night, the State Police unit received a call from the Eastern Correctional Institution in reference to an inmate death. Investigators say 2 men were taken to the hospital. Alexander Christopher, who was an inmate serving time at the facility, was pronounced dead at the hospital.
Eastern Correctional Institution, Maryland's largest prison, is located in Somerset County on the state's rural eastern shore, far from the urban areas where many of its inmates originate. With a capacity exceeding 3,300 inmates, Eastern Correctional Institution operates primarily as a medium security facility, though it includes some maximum security sections. Despite its classification, Eastern Correctional Institution has become one of the most dangerous and corrupted prisons in the state, plagued by gang activity, staff misconduct, and widespread violence. In 2016, the prison's deep-rooted problems were exposed during a sweeping federal investigation. A massive racketeering scheme involving dozens of inmates, outside associates, and prison staff was uncovered, revealing the extent to which corruption had infiltrated the institution. In total, 80 individuals were indicted, including 18 correctional officers who were accused of accepting bribes and sexual favors in exchange for smuggling drugs, cell phones, tobacco, and other contraband into the prison. This illicit pipeline allowed gangs to operate freely behind bars, coordinating drug sales, enforcing discipline, and carrying out retaliatory attacks. The investigation painted a grim picture of Eastern Correctional Institution as a prison where gang members, particularly those from groups like the Black Guerrilla Family and MS-13, used corrupt officers to turn the facility into a lucrative criminal enterprise. Contraband cell phones, in particular, empowered gang leaders to run operations from within their cells, leading to internal assaults and orchestrated violence both inside and outside the prison walls. In June 2024, a 49-year-old inmate named John Stanford was found deleted in his cell, one of several deletions that have occurred in recent years. In 2022, 2 inmates died on the same night under suspicious circumstances, triggering another investigation into possible foul play. Other inmates have suffered severe stab wounds during disputes in housing units, and fights frequently erupt in the prison's yard and dormitories, often the result of simmering gang rivalries. The facility's remote location has only worsened its problems. Persistent staffing shortages have left areas of the prison undersupervised, making it easier for gangs to operate unchecked. Families of correctional officers have staged public protests to demand better staffing levels and safer working conditions. Despite state promises to reform the institution following the 2016 scandal, the cycle of contraband, corruption, and violence has proven incredibly difficult to break. Although Eastern Correctional Institution is classified as medium security, its size, gang saturation, history of internal corruption, and inability to maintain consistent control have made it one of the most dangerous prisons in Maryland, both for the people who work there and those confined behind its walls.
Well, today, 15 people, including inmates and corrections officers, were indicted as part of a contraband conspiracy.
These incidents took place at the Roxbury Correctional Institute in Hagerstown and shows a sophisticated criminal network.
15 indictments for 3 separate contraband conspiracies, all allegedly happening at the Roxbury Correctional Institute in Hagerstown. In one case, investigators revealed that an inmate, Jose Tapia, recruited 2 civilians, Guy Austin Jr. and Maya Scott, through Instagram to operate drones to deliver contraband. Second conspiracy, dietary corrections officer Tamil Ashby allegedly smuggled drugs to inmate Jamal Brown, who was also assigned to work in the prison kitchen.
She was an employee from another region who abused her role as a protector of the incarcerated population while doing overtime here at Roxbury.
When she arrived for an overtime shift at the facility, officers say they found 158 strips of Suboxone hidden within her uniform. That was to be sold for $100 per strip inside the prison.
Update in Washington County, 2 additional correctional officers have now been arrested in an ongoing investigation at the Roxbury prison near Hagerstown, Maryland. Corrections officers Julie Chatterton and Monica Shields were charged with felony possession of meth with intent to distribute. The investigation found illegal substances were entering the prison through a drone. 14 people were arrested last month, including 1 other corrections officer.
Roxbury Correctional Institution in Hagerstown is a medium security prison with a notorious reputation for violence, scandal, and deep-rooted systemic issues. While it may not carry the Supermax label, Roxbury Correctional Institution has been home to some of the most shocking and disturbing incidents in Maryland's correctional history. Incidents that have exposed major flaws in both security and oversight. One of the most tragic events occurred in 2006 when correctional officer Jeffrey Roden was deleting while guarding an inmate at a local hospital. The prisoner, Brandon Morris, managed to overpower Officer Roden, take his service weapon, and fatally shoot him in the face during an attempted escape. After fleeing the hospital, Morris carjacked a vehicle, but was quickly recaptured. The incident sent shockwaves through the Maryland prison system. Rhoton's death marked the first time in over 2 decades that a correctional officer in the state had been deleted in the line of duty. It also revealed glaring security failures, such as leaving a single officer to guard a high-risk inmate with insufficient restraints in a public setting. Just 2 years later, the institution made headlines again, but this time, it wasn't an inmate committing violence, it was the staff. In 2008, an inmate named Kenneth Davis was brutally beaten in a coordinated assault by at least a dozen correctional officers spanning multiple shifts. The attacks were allegedly carried out as revenge for an earlier incident in which Davis had punched a guard. The beatings were severe enough to send Davis to the hospital, and federal prosecutors later revealed that officers conspired to cover up the assaults. A lieutenant was even accused of destroying surveillance footage and coaching others to lie during the investigation. Eventually, 9 officers were indicted on federal civil rights charges, exposing a disturbing culture of abuse where some staff members acted more like a violent gang than correctional professionals. These 2 incidents, the deletion of an officer by an inmate and the brutal retaliation against an inmate by staff, define Roxbury Correctional Institution legacy of danger and dysfunction. They also illustrate that the threats inside prison walls can come from either side of the bars. Beyond these headline cases, Roxbury has continued to struggle with inmate-on-inmate violence, gang activity, and tensions between inmates from different regions. It houses members of several major gangs, including the Black Guerrilla Family and Dead Man Incorporated, and occasional flare-ups between urban and rural factions have led to fights and lockdowns. Part of a trio of state prisons clustered near Hagerstown, once known informally as Riot Alley, Roxbury stands out not just for the brutality it has witnessed, but for how those events have highlighted the blurred line between those incarcerated and those in charge.
They allegedly provided detainees with drugs and cell phones in exchange for money and sex, and now 3 correctional officers are facing federal charges. What allegedly happened over a 4-year period here at the Chesapeake Detention Facility on East Madison Street is reminiscent of the smuggling operation ran by the Black Guerrilla Family, which shocked the city 7 years ago.
The correctional officers charged in this indictment allegedly were able to bring contraband into CDF, even though they were subject to security screenings, by hiding it on their persons, in their clothing, and in bags or containers of food.
Drugs, cell phones, chargers, and tobacco, all in exchange for money and more.
Some of the correctional officers allegedly engaged in improper relationships with detainees, including sexual relationships.
The 3 correctional officers allegedly worked through facilitators outside the prison, and detainees acted as wholesalers, selling the drugs on the inside at a huge profit.
They bragged about
Chesapeake Detention Facility, formerly known as the Maryland Correctional Adjustment Center and often referred to as Supermax, was designed to house Maryland's most dangerous inmates under near solitary lockdown. Located in Baltimore, the facility was built with maximum security in mind, holding federal pretrial detainees and high-ranking gang leaders who posed a serious risk to staff, other inmates, and public safety. But despite its strict security protocols, Chesapeake Detention Facility has proven far from immune to the same issues that plague other Maryland prisons. One of the most shocking incidents occurred in 2010, when a convicted criminal named Raymond Taylor walked right out of the Supermax by impersonating another inmate. Brought in for a court appearance, Taylor was placed in a holding cell with a detainee serving a short sentence. When the other inmate's name was called for release, Taylor stepped forward, presented the inmate's ID, and managed to fool multiple officers before being released through the front door. Hours passed before staff realized the real inmate was still locked up. By then, Taylor had fled the city. He was eventually captured the next day, but the incident revealed troubling procedural lapses at a facility touted as escape-proof. Beyond escapes, the prison has also dealt with gang violence and internal unrest, even with detainees confined to their cells 23 hours a day. Many of the inmates at CDF are awaiting federal trials, including members of high-profile gangs such as MS-13 and the Black Guerrilla family. While large-scale riots are rare due to the facility structure, violence still finds its way in through attacks during limited recreation and through disturbing tactics like inmates throwing bodily fluids at staff. Perhaps more alarming is the corruption among correctional officers. In 2021, 2 officers were charged with participating in a contraband smuggling scheme. Investigators discovered that the officers had accepted bribes and even maintained personal relationships with detainees in exchange for bringing in drugs, tobacco, cell phones, and other banned items. In one case, an officer even delivered liquor as a birthday gift to a gang-affiliated inmate. These breaches gave inmates access to narcotics and unmonitored communication devices, which not only compromised the safety of the facility, but also allowed gangs to continue coordinating criminal activity from behind bars. Though it houses fewer inmates than larger institutions like Jessup or ECI, the profile of Chesapeake's population, violent, high-level gang members, and federal defendants, makes it a uniquely volatile environment. The facility was built to impose complete control, but incidents like successful escape attempts and internal corruption have proven that no level of security is foolproof. Chesapeake Detention Facility stands as a stark reminder that even the most fortified correctional settings can become battlegrounds for organized crime and systemic failure. It remains one of the most dangerous and unpredictable places of confinement in Maryland.
Georgia's prison system has long been under scrutiny due to various issues, including overcrowding, violence, and inadequate living conditions. Several prisons across the state have garnered attention for their troubling history of riots, gang violence, and poor management. From maximum security facilities to medium security prisons, these institutions have faced significant challenges in maintaining order and ensuring the safety of both inmates and staff. In this overview, we examine some of the most notorious prisons in Georgia, including USP Atlanta, Baldwin State Prison, Georgia State Prison in Wrightsville, and others, highlighting the incidents that have contributed to their dangerous reputations.
Thank you. Channel 2 investigates possible prison corruption here in Atlanta. Today, whistleblowers testified on Capitol Hill about major security and safety problems at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary.
Well, Linda, some of the testimony here today, you just cannot imagine what staff here were thinking, leaving the doors to the prisons open, hoping stray cats would come in and deal with their rat problem, intentionally damaging the drug screening equipment. The safety lapse is so bad that an internal security audit by the U.S. government said it's a safety danger, not just to people here in the neighborhood, but to people all over the Southeast.
USP Atlanta is frequently ranked as one of the most problematic federal prisons in the U.S. The facility, which houses around 2,000 inmates, is notorious for confining inmates in small 56-square-foot isolation cells for extended periods during transfers. One of its most infamous incidents occurred in 1987, when Cuban detainees staged a violent riot, setting fires and causing chaos throughout the prison. Both guards and inmates sustained injuries during the unrest, highlighting severe security and management issues within the facility. Over the years, the prison has gained a reputation for overcrowding, violence, and poor conditions, making it a consistent fixture on lists of the worst penitentiaries in the country. High-profile inmates like Michael Vick, the former NFL quarterback, and Bernard Madoff, the financier convicted of orchestrating one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history, have been housed at USP Atlanta, adding to its notoriety.
Covering Ware County, Georgia. Tonight, we're learning more about an incident that took place inside the Ware State Prison. This is near Waycross, that prompted the prison to go into lockdown. According to the Georgia Department of Corrections, 2 staff members and 3 inmates were hurt during the incident.
But new video continues to surface from that night and from the days following, showing a situation that both guards and inmates say is a powder keg. Ann Schindler has more.
A war zone.
The riot played out live on social media.
Chaos, destruction.
Inmates took control of Ware State Prison Saturday, badly injuring at least 2 guards, including one who remains in the hospital. But even some employees who weren't hurt haven't been able to return.
I haven't been able.
Ware State Prison in Georgia has been a site of significant controversy and concern regarding its conditions and safety. In August 2020, a major riot occurred at the facility involving hundreds of inmates who gained control over parts of the prison. The incident, which led to the injury of several guards, highlighted the dire conditions inside the prison, including severe overcrowding, understaffing, and inadequate facilities. Inmates reportedly faced inhumane conditions such as broken toilets, limited access to clean water, and insufficient medical care. These issues were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which further strained the prison's resources and staff. Former correctional officers and human rights organizations have spoken out about the systemic problems at Ware State Prison. They've called attention to poor management, dangerous staffing shortages, and a lack of response to safety concerns raised by staff. The Southern Center for Human Rights even requested federal intervention, describing the situation as a constitutional crisis due to the deteriorating conditions and escalating violence within Georgia's prison system. Although the Georgia Department of Corrections has acknowledged some of these problems, there is still a long way to go in addressing these critical issues.
Barksdale says in June 2019, Dunnigan and Butler strangled, stabbed inmate David Wilson, and then set him on fire in his cell. It happened at Baldwin State Prison in Hardwick. According to state prison records, Dunnigan was in prison for an armed robbery. Butler was in jail for several burglaries and false imprisonment.
Brad Means, thanks for joining us. As coverage you can count on begins at 6 with the ongoing search for an escaped inmate. Here's what we know so far. Investigators from several agencies are searching for William Knight. He broke out of jail on Monday. The search now focusing in the area of Highway 272 and Indian Trail Road in the eastern part of Washington County, Georgia.
Baldwin State Prison, located in Georgia, has a troubling history of violence and misconduct, despite being classified as a medium security facility. With a capacity to hold up to 992 inmates, it has been the site of several violent incidents over the years. Recently, a severe assault left one inmate narrowly escaping serious harm, underscoring ongoing safety concerns within the institution. The prison has also faced significant legal challenges in the past. In 1984, when Baldwin State Prison functioned exclusively as a women's facility, multiple lawsuits were filed by female inmates alleging sexual abuse by prison staff. These accusations led to a series of legal actions that continued through the early 1990s, with nearly 200 women eventually coming forward to report instances of abuse by prison employees. This troubling history reflects deep-rooted issues within the facility, which have persisted even after it transitioned to housing male inmates. Despite not being a maximum security prison, Baldwin has been plagued by serious security concerns and allegations of misconduct, highlighting the need for continued oversight and reform.
In the last 4.5 hours or so, the Georgia Department of Corrections says that the prison was put on lockdown, but now that the sun is up, there are family, friends, and loved ones that still feel like they are left with more questions and answers this morning. And here at the Waycross Police Department, they receive a lot of calls with those questions, people trying to figure out exactly what happened inside of the Ware State Prison that led to a riot. And I want to show you this video new into our newsroom this morning. You can see what appears to be a pretty sizable fire around the Ware State Prison. We're still working to learn how that started, and we're also working to confirm the authenticity of this video. But
Donnie Rowe was convicted yesterday of shooting officers in Putnam County back in 2017. He allegedly had help from a fellow inmate, Ricky DuBose. After the shooting, the two escaped and led officers on a manhunt across the southeast. Rowe now awaits sentencing, where he's facing the death penalty. DuBose's trial is set to start in May 2020.
Georgia State Prison in Wrightsville, Georgia, has a long and complex history marked by both its architectural significance and its troubled past. Opened in 1936 as a modern replacement for convict labor camps, it was built with funding from the Public Works Administration. Initially hailed as a model prison, it quickly became known for its harsh conditions and the violent behavior of its inmate population. The prison's design is notable for its Depression modern style, a stripped-down form of classical architecture intended to reflect strength and order. Despite these intentions, the facility has seen a history of severe incidents, including riots and inmate violence. One of the most notorious events was a riot in 1978, during which multiple inmates were involved in violent outbreaks. Over the years, the prison has housed some of the most dangerous inmates in the state, and its isolated location contributed to its reputation as a harsh and formidable facility. For a time, the prison served as Georgia's main execution site, where executions by electric chair were carried out. Despite being intended as a self-sufficient institution with its own farm and workshops, the prison has faced ongoing challenges with maintaining order and safety. Today, Georgia State Prison remains a maximum security facility for some of the most violent offenders in the state. Efforts to rehabilitate inmates have been overshadowed by its history of violence and strict control measures, making it one of the most infamous prisons in Georgia. Smith State Prison, located in Glenville, Georgia, has gained a reputation for severe conditions and significant safety concerns. The facility has been repeatedly criticized for its handling of gang violence and inmate treatment. In 2011, an inmate's unexplained deletion raised public concern when the Department of Corrections did not provide details beyond stating it wasn't related to a riot. The prison has continued to face issues over the years, including a recent incident in June 2024 when an inmate, Jadricus Hart, reportedly deleted a contracted food service worker before taking his own life. This incident highlighted ongoing problems with safety and oversight at the facility. In addition to these violent events, the prison has also been linked to a pattern of staff and inmate altercations. In a tragic incident in 2023, Corrections Officer Robert Clark was deleted by an inmate using a homemade weapon. This attack occurred while Clark was escorting 2 prisoners, reflecting the ongoing risks faced by both staff and inmates within the facility. These events have contributed to Smith State Prison being considered one of the more problematic facilities in the Georgia correctional system, emphasizing the urgent need for reforms to improve safety and living conditions.
Guards at Hays State Prison in Tryon, Georgia are resigning at a rate not seen since inmates attacked 2 guards 18 months ago. The latest exodus began in June, around the time the Department of Corrections announced that Scott Crickmar would replace Rick Jacobs as warden. We're told there have been questions among guards about whether Crickmar has enough experience for Hays Prison. Walker State, the prison he comes from, is just over half the size of Hays, and the worst offenders aren't even housed there.
A former Georgia corrections officer pled guilty to taking money from an inmate to smuggle drugs into Hays State Prison. Investigators say 34-year-old Tiffany Cook was called. Georgia Department of Corrections says an inmate tipped them off. Cook is scheduled to be sentenced December 21st. Matt Uris for CW Atlanta.
Hays State Prison has experienced numerous violent incidents in recent years, adding to its reputation as one of Georgia's more dangerous correctional facilities. In June 2023, an inmate was charged with the fatal stabbing of his cellmate, marking another tragic episode in the prison's history of violence. This facility has been plagued by issues such as gang-related activity, contraband, and the use of homemade weapons, contributing to a volatile environment for both inmates and staff. Additionally, Hays State Prison has struggled with overcrowding and inadequate staffing, which has exacerbated security challenges and made it difficult to maintain control over the inmate population. In past years, reports have also highlighted systemic problems, including allegations of corruption among staff and inadequate medical care, further complicating the conditions at the prison. These ongoing challenges at Hays State Prison underscore the need for continued reform and oversight to improve safety and living conditions for those incarcerated there. Addressing these issues is crucial to prevent further harm and to uphold the standards expected of a correctional facility.
Continue today for a man charged in connection to the deadliest prison riot in South Carolina history. Stephen Green's the second inmate to go to trial for his alleged role in the 2018 Lee Correctional Prison riot. That riot left 7 inmates dead, 22 others hurt. Green's facing multiple charges, including murder, assault and battery by a mob, and weapons charges. Opening statements began yesterday. The state argues Green was a part of the group of inmates that killed another inmate, Cornelius McCleary. Prosecutors shared video evidence of the brutal, which investigators say was fueled by gang rivalry within the prison. Authorities believe Green and McCleary were members of rival gangs. The defense fought back, saying there's no physical evidence that connects Green to the crime. Witness testimony is happening today.
All right, thank you, Tony. New at noon, 2 more inmates, Kamara Jordan and David Dozier, have entered guilty pleas for their charges in connection to the deadliest prison riot in South Carolina history. Dozier pleaded guilty to possession of a weapon and was sentenced to 3 consecutive years of imprisonment. Jordan pleaded guilty to possession of contraband and was sentenced to 2 years. We're also seeing new developments from another inmate facing charges. According to South Carolina Department of Corrections, Joshua Phillips is facing 3 counts of mob violence resulting in death.
Thanks. New tonight, an inmate died at the Lee Correctional Institution in Bishopville on Thursday. That, according to the South Carolina Department of Corrections. In a release, SCDC says that 46-year-old Max Naughton was found unresponsive in his cell on Thursday night. He did not have a cellmate, his death being investigated as a suspected suicide, SCDC says.
And new tonight at 11, an inmate at Lee Correctional in Bishopville has died this evening after being stabbed during a fight with other inmates. That inmate that has died is identified as 41-year-old Marco Sanders. 2 other inmates were taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, while a 4th inmate was treated for minor wounds.
Lee Correctional Institution, located in Bishopville, South Carolina, is often described as the state's most dangerous prison. Opened in 1993, the maximum security facility was built to hold more than 1,500 inmates, many serving long sentences for violent crimes. Unlike some older prisons, Lee has no gun towers and relatively few security cameras, a design that has drawn heavy criticism in light of its violent history. Over the last decade, Lee has become notorious for deadly riots, fights, and hostage situations, fueled largely by gang rivalries and contraband cell phones. The most infamous incident occurred in April 2018, when a dispute between gangs over prison territory and smuggled phones exploded into chaos. The riot raged for 7 hours as inmates armed with makeshift knives stabbed, slashed, and beat rivals. Bodies were stacked in dormitories by the time the violence ended. 7 prisoners were killed and 22 more were injured, making it one of the deadliest prison riots in modern U.S. history. No guards were harmed, but the scale of the violence shocked the nation. In its aftermath, South Carolina's governor approved millions of dollars for security upgrades. Investigations revealed that chronic staff shortages had left dorms nearly unsupervised. Court filings alleged that officials knew about broken cell door locks, overcrowding, and a lack of staffing but failed to address them. In some dorms, a single officer was responsible for monitoring more than 100 inmates, leaving prisoners largely free to enforce their own rules. Contraband cell phones made the problem worse, allowing gang members to coordinate attacks in real time. Since the riot, prison authorities have attempted reforms. They installed new cell door locking hardware, added perimeter nets to prevent contraband drops, deployed phone detection technology, and even brought in drone surveillance to monitor smuggling attempts. Still, challenges persist. A 2024 state audit found that despite $1 million spent on upgraded locks, overcrowding and cell phone use remain ongoing problems, with legal restrictions on cell phone signal jamming making it nearly impossible to cut off gang communications entirely. Today, Lee Correctional remains a tinderbox of violence, where rival gangs such as the Bloods, Crips, and Gangster Disciples battle for influence and control. Attorneys representing inmates continue to warn that without deeper reforms, the prison's volatile mix of gang rivalries, contraband, and understaffing could lead to more bloodshed in the future.
Investigators say Zaire Nathaniel Lopez is charged with possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, providing contraband to prisoners, criminal conspiracy, and misconduct in office. The Department of Corrections says charges relate to him bringing marijuana, tobacco, and rolling papers into Broad River, hidden in a food container, then leaving it in a trash bag in an inmate living area.
A nursing supervisor for Broad River Correctional Institution has been arrested for providing an inmate contraband. According to the South Carolina Department of Corrections, 29-year-old Deandra Frierson was arrested and fired today. She's accused of taking a cell phone into an inmate.
Corrections officer has been stabbed at Broad River Correctional Institute in Columbia. The Department of Corrections says several inmates attacked the officer. He was taken to an outside hospital, is expected to be okay.
Says 52-year-old Isaac Stark was found unresponsive in his cell yesterday at the Broad River Correctional Institution. SLED is working with the prisoners, the prison system that is, to see how he died, but online records show that he had been serving time following a conviction on child sex crimes.
Broad River Correctional Institution, a maximum security prison in Columbia, South Carolina, has long carried a reputation for violence. In 2024, that reputation was reinforced by 2 especially brutal inmate-on-inmate assaults that left their victims with life-threatening injuries. The first incident occurred in April 2024, when 4 inmates allegedly cornered and attacked another prisoner inside the facility. Prosecutors say the group pushed, punched, kicked, and slammed the man onto the concrete floor before beating him with a broomstick. The assault left the victim with catastrophic injuries, including a fractured jaw, a brain hemorrhage, and a collapsed lung. Just months later, Broad River was the scene of another vicious attack. In this case, an inmate allegedly slammed a fellow prisoner's head into a steel door and then gouged at his face with a piece of tile. The victim suffered severe trauma, including critical head and lung injuries, and required emergency medical attention. These back-to-back assaults highlight the ongoing dangers inside Broad River, where mob-style violence can erupt suddenly and with devastating consequences. In 2024 alone, 2 inmates were left fighting for their lives after savage beatings, underscoring the persistent volatility and intensity of prisoner conflicts within the walls of one of South Carolina's most notorious prisons.
These 4 incarcerated men found strangled in a prison cell on Friday. Arrest warrants reveal the men were lured into a cell before they were strangled with electrical cords. 2 men found beaten and stabbed with a broken broomstick. On Friday, he admitted to killing the 4 men along with 25-year-old Jacob Phillip.
A correctional officer working at Kirkland Correctional Institution in Columbia has been arrested. He's 25-year-old Dalton Manning. According to warrants, he's charged with attempting to introduce contraband into the prison after he concealed a cell phone and 2 packages of tobacco in his belongings. Investigators say when the contraband items were discovered, Manning abandoned his duty station and fled the facility.
Kirkland Correctional Institution, a medium-security prison in Columbia, South Carolina, has developed a grim reputation for violence, marked by a series of high-profile killings and standoffs over the past decade. One of the deadliest incidents occurred in April 2017, when 4 inmates were found strangled to death inside a dorm within just 30 minutes. Investigators later charged 2 other prisoners with carrying out the deletions, an episode that shocked the state and drew national attention to conditions inside Kirkland. Deadly violence at the prison was not unprecedented. In 2015, 2 inmates managed to take 2 corrections staffers hostage for nearly 6 hours. Though the standoff ended without serious injuries, the event underscored the dangers staff face in an environment where homemade weapons and gang tensions are common. Over the years, there have also been multiple reports of prisoners wielding improvised blades, attacking rivals, and even holding guards at knife point. Kirkland's troubling record of cell deletions, hostage situations, and weapon-fueled assaults has cemented its place among South Carolina's most violent prisons. Despite being classified as medium security, the facility's history demonstrates how volatile and deadly life behind its walls can become.
And inmates living it up on social media.
No, we about to show you how to rock.
Officials confirming the inmate in the video as Jose Rivera. He's serving 10 years at Evans Correctional Institution for a 2014 burglary conviction.
Baby mama, you know you love me.
The Facebook Live video was posted on Rivera's page August 4th. He's seen flashing a weapon as he gives viewers a live tour of the facility.
You see this? This is how we do it in here. Baby mama's tripping, but she watching though. If she loving me though, she can talk all that she won't.
State leaders who saw the clip say it's dangerous and threatens security.
State corrections officer facing charges after investigators say she had a relationship with an inmate. The department says that Chanel McClanahan worked at Evans Correctional in Bennettsville. An arrest warrant tonight says a cell phone search found in the inmate's cell showed photos of the officer, some of which contained nudity.
2 correctional officers were stabbed and assaulted by an inmate. The South Carolina Department of Corrections tells us it happened yesterday at the Evans Correctional Institution in Bennettsville. Both officers have been released from a medical facility. The inmate allegedly responsible has been moved to another prison for now.
And on your morning crime tracker with news breaking overnight out of Bennettsville, where 2 correctional officers are expected to be okay after they were stabbed by an inmate. A spokesperson for the Evans Correctional Institute tells us the incident occurred yesterday.
Evans Correctional Institution, a medium security prison in Bennettsville, South Carolina, has faced repeated outbreaks of violence involving both inmates and staff. In 2017, the facility made headlines when inmate Kendrick Hoover was fatally stabbed by another prisoner, underscoring the deadly risks posed by improvised weapons behind bars. Violence at Evans did not stop there. In 2024, prosecutors charged an inmate with assaulting another prisoner using a homemade shank, another reminder of the ever-present danger of inmate conflicts. The prison's reputation for volatility grew further in August 2025, when an inmate suddenly turned on two female correctional officers. Armed with a weapon, the prisoner stabbed both guards during the surprise attack. Fortunately, the officers were rushed to a hospital, treated for their wounds, and released the same day with non-life-threatening injuries. These incidents at Evans demonstrate how even a medium-security prison can become the site of sudden, violent eruptions not only between inmates, but also directed at correctional staff. The facility's history shows that South Carolina's prison crisis extends well beyond its maximum security institutions.
A former correctional officer in Edgefield County has been convicted on drug and misconduct charges. She's 41-year-old Janine Dunbar. In June of last year, she smuggled drugs into Trenton Correctional for an inmate by hiding them under her clothes.
Guards were sent to the hospital after SWAT teams came in and rescued them and 4 others from a riot here at this South Carolina prison. The incident occurred at the Trenton Correctional Institute, nearly 70 miles southwest of Columbia. Corrections Department spokesman Brian Sterling says the officers were assaulted around midnight by several inmates after looking for a contraband cell phone. This sparked multiple fires, destruction of property in the dorms, and rioting among the prisoners.
Trenton Correctional Institution, a medium security prison in Edgefield County housing roughly 600 inmates, has struggled with disturbances fueled by contraband. In June 2017, the facility erupted into chaos after officers attempted to confiscate a hidden cell phone from an inmate. What began as a routine search escalated quickly. Other prisoners began to rally in defiance, setting fires, trashing dormitories, and forcing 6 correctional officers to barricade themselves inside a dorm for safety. The situation grew so volatile that local SWAT teams were called in to restore order. 2 officers sustained injuries, but were treated and released, while no inmates were reported hurt. The riots served as a stark example of how even a single contraband phone, in an understaffed and tense environment, can ignite large-scale disorder inside a prison. In the aftermath, officials pledged tighter sweeps for cell phones and increased staff training, hoping to prevent similar breakdowns of control in the future.
On 2 separate occasions this week, 2 women were arrested trying to sneak drugs into Lee Correctional Facility. Deputies say Terry Newman was pulled over by police on her way to the prison early this morning. They say after searching her car, they found more than 1,900 pills, several cell phones, tools, and tobacco products. This just 3 days after another woman actually made it into the facility with marijuana.
Over the weekend, Tammy Lynn Phillips was arrested for trying to sneak 58 grams of marijuana to an inmate. Officials say she was able to get through the front door and into the visitation area.
The Correctional Institute in Ridgeville say an officer is recovering after being assaulted by an inmate this morning. Officials say that officer was assaulted while confiscating a cell phone from an inmate in the rec yard. They tell us the inmate was using weapons to fight to keep the illegal phone.
This morning for a man suspected of throwing contraband over a fence into Lee Correctional in Ridgeville. State Department of Corrections arrested 2 men in connection to Monday's incident. Officers recovered 3 packages. They say contain 11 cell phones, 200 doses of ecstasy, and nearly 80 packages of tobacco wrappers. New today, a correctional officer at Lieber Prison in Ridgeville is facing charges this morning. According to the arrest warrant, Anthony Mergolo admitted that he brought contraband, including marijuana, into the prison with the intent to sell it.
27-year-old Christopher Lewis Dendy Jr. is charged with blackmail and extortion money laundering, possession of a cell phone by a prisoner, and violating the Computer Crime Act. Warrants provided by the State Department of Corrections said he used a contraband phone to create fake female profiles on a dating app, which he matched with a victim. He is accused of contacting the victim and claiming the female was a minor and threatened him with criminal exploitation charges unless he paid. Dindy was serving a 10-year sentence for voluntary manslaughter, armed robbery, and drug charges.
Officials say that Wilson was stabbed when a fight broke out in one of the prison's common areas. 3 other inmates were injured in that scuffle. The inspector general is now investigating his death as a homicide.
An investigation is underway after an inmate at the Lee Correctional Institution died last night. According to officials with the South Carolina Department of Corrections, 33-year-old David Byron Garrett died after a small fire in his cell.
Lee Correctional Institution, a medium security prison, has faced recurring problems over the years. In July 2016, inmate Ryan Mansfield was strangled to death by his cellmate during a dispute over food. Investigators reported that Mansfield refused to give up portions of his meal, which led to the fatal attack inside their shared cell. More recently, in 2024, Lieber was named alongside Turbeville and Kershaw prisons in a corruption probe that revealed guards smuggling drugs and cell phones to inmates. 4 people were charged in the scheme, highlighting the persistent issue of contraband entering the facility, combined with periodic fights and assaults. These incidents have kept Lieber under the watch of prison oversight groups.
This was a scene earlier this afternoon when a situation behind bars got out of control.
One of our officers was taken hostage for a period of time. He was subsequently released.
For 5 hours, agents and officers tried to get the situation under control. The Department of Corrections director says there are about 180 inmates living in the dorm where this all happened.
Correctional facilities do pose certain risks, but we're trained for those risks.
The director isn't releasing the name of the officer yet, but says the injuries aren't life-threatening and the officer is being treated at the hospital.
Perry Correctional in Pelzer is on lockdown this morning. State Senator Carl Allen tells her sister station, WSBA, that 10 inmates refused a command to return to their cells Friday. He says they also remained defiant Saturday. The Department of Corrections said that in a statement, the lockdown around was a precaution.
Perry Correctional Institution, a medium security prison, has developed a reputation for violence and high-risk incidents. In April 2016, a corrections officer was taken hostage during a prison disturbance, an event that underscored ongoing safety concerns. Later in the decade, the facility saw multiple escape attempts, including one case where inmates used a handball-sized contraband weapon to overpower a guard before a tactical unit regained control. Though officially classified as medium security, Perry often houses violent offenders transferred from higher security prisons. Its history of riots, escapes, and disturbances has cemented its standing as one of South Carolina's more volatile institutions.
This is 38-year-old Wesley Applegate. He was arrested Monday for the alleged incident which took place in November of last year. Applegate now charged with second-degree assault after the arrest warrant states several people witnessed him having sex with the 21-year-old inmate at the facility. The inmate eventually admitted to having sex with Applegate. She also stated she was not forced, nor did she feel like she was forced. It was revealed she had known Applegate for 2 years, and they had kissed every time they saw each other.
Coroner facing charges after authorities say she snuck drugs into a prison or sneaked drugs into the prison.
A female officer struggled to save her own life after being attacked by an inmate. The incident happened just before 3:30 p.m. while the officer was conducting a security check.
The Department of Corrections is investigating 2 separate deaths of incarcerated men at Gardner Correctional in Newtown. Officials say one death happened July 19th, the other July 21st.
Right. To the arrest warrant, a fight broke out at the McDougal Walker Correctional Institution in August of last year. Now, during that fight, Christopher Carlson, you see him on your screen, allegedly told an inmate to remove something from his window, but he didn't comply. Police say Carlson then beat the inmate in response, striking him multiple times in the head. Carlson has been charged with third-degree assault.
I'm never going to accept it.
It's been 3 years since Melicia Taylor lost her son, Jamari, who was being held at McDougal Walker Correctional Institute in Suffield. The state maintains that Jamari died at 19 of natural causes, but his family doesn't believe that. His family filed a lawsuit claiming he died because of negligence and or deliberate indifference by the Department of Correction. That includes Taylor's cellmate pushing an emergency button 3 times because he was struggling to breathe before a corrections officer instructed 2 others to check Taylor's cell. The officer could also be heard doubting the need for help at the cell and conveying that doubt. NBC Connecticut obtained this video in February 2022 showing officers seeming to casually respond to the emergency call.
Coroner facing charges after authorities say she snuck drugs into a prison or sneaked drugs into the prison. According to the South Carolina Department of Corrections, 30-year-old Marquis Cooper is being charged with distribution of and providing contraband to an inmate. Authorities say she managed to smuggle the drugs into the visitation room at McDougal Correctional and gave them to an inmate.
McDougal Walker Correctional Institution in Suffield sent 5 staff members to the hospital today. We're told they were helping an inmate who was showing signs of an apparent overdose. The staff gave the inmate Narcan and the inmate did go to the hospital. Then 5 staff members said they felt dizzy and hot. They also went to the hospital.
Just 30 minutes north of Hartford lies the McDougal Walker Complex in Suffield. This merged facility is Connecticut's only Level 4 TO5 high maximum security prison for men and, by official count, the largest correctional institution in New England. It houses long-term inmates and some on protective custody or awaiting high bonds in a highly structured environment. Despite its accreditation, recent years have seen dangerous assaults. In January 2024, an inmate in the McDougal unit armed himself with a sharpened metal shank and stabbed a correction officer in the chest and forearm. Both officer and inmate were hospitalized but survived. Similarly, a viral video from June 2023 showed another McDougal officer being knocked unconscious by a single prison punch. DOC spokespeople confirmed these attacks. Unions blame understaffing and an influx of contraband weapons. Staff warn that assault rates have risen in the last 2 years, straining morale. In response, the DOC says it's deployed more metal detectors, K9 searches, and plans to relieve overcrowding where possible.
About 6:30 last night, it was the peak of trick-or-treating in Cheshire when officials say 25-year-old Lewis Clark escaped from prison. It triggered a massive manhunt. K9 crews were out tracking his scent while other officers in cars combed the area. After several hours on the run, police tell us Clark was captured on Broad Street in Meriden, nearly 10 miles away. Eyewitness News learned Clark is from Wallingford and was convicted back in 2015 of criminal trespass, DUI, and interfering with officers. He entered Cheshire Correctional on June 29th and was supposed to serve 18 months for violating his probation. We're told he was in a minimum security housing area when he escaped. He now faces criminal escape charges and will likely serve more time.
The Connecticut Department of Corrections says just before 8:30 Tuesday morning, an inmate attacked 2 correctional officers using a makeshift weapon from a toothbrush. Officials say one officer was stabbed in the neck and the other in the torso. Both were rushed to a local hospital where they were treated for their injuries and released. 35-year-old Joe Baltus from Meriden is serving a 96-year sentence for a 2006 stabbing death of a family member of his then-girlfriend. He was 18 at the time of the Since then, Baltus has a number of pending charges while in custody, including 10 counts of assault on a public safety officer and 3 counts of having a weapon while in a correctional facility.
The Department of Corrections is investigating 2 separate deaths of incarcerated men at Gardner Correctional in Newtown. Officials say one death happened July 19th, the other July 21st. In both cases, staff said they administered life-saving measures, but neither man survived.
Gardner Correctional Institution, a Level 4 prison in Newtown, is Connecticut's residential center for male inmates with serious mental health needs. Under this one campus's roof are not only general population prisoners, but also those in intensive treatment. Gardner even pioneered in 1993 a close custody phase program specifically for incarcerated gang members, reflecting its history of housing high-risk cases. However, mental illness and history of violence can coincide in tragedy. In August 2023, for instance, 2 correction officers were stabbed by an inmate at Gardner. The attacker, Joe Baltus, serving life for deletion, used a shank fashioned from a sharpened toothbrush. One officer required stitches in the neck, the other dodged the blade. Baltimore then barricaded himself before DOC SWAT intervened. Both officers recovered after hospital treatment. After the assault, the inmate was moved to a higher security lockup. DOC press releases and union comments noted that weaponry in the prison despite routine searches is a persistent danger.
This is 38-year-old Wesley Applegate. He was arrested Monday for the alleged incident which took place in November of last year. Applegate now charged with second-degree sexual assault after the arrest warrant states several people witnessed him having sex with the 21-year-old inmate at the facility, specifically the OM room known as Officer Mess. Wesley Applegate was working as a corrections officer at the York Correctional Institution since 2008, but because of these allegations, he was then moved to the Corrigan Correctional Center. The warrant goes on to say a witness told detectives she decided to report this because she was afraid the inmate was being by Applegate. Police took the inmate's clothes she wore the day of the incident as DNA evidence. The inmate eventually admitted to having sex with Applegate. She also stated she was not forced, nor did she feel like she was forced. It was revealed she had known Applegate for 2 years, and they had kissed every time they saw each other, but had no intentions of it becoming a dating relationship. When Applegate was questioned by police, he denied the allegations. A background check was later conducted, and records show Applegate had a DUI in 2014.
Call it a brazen breakout. 2 female inmates bolting, basically walking away from the York Correctional Facility in Niantic. Residents put on alert.
They're not dangerous, but I guess somebody on the run could be dangerous to some degree.
Out on the loose, 30-year-old Melissa Riley of Willimantic doing time for a drug conviction. Her cohort, 34-year-old Jessica Rivera of Waterbury, has escaped custody before leaving a halfway house. It was no major escape, as these offenders are housed in a minimum security section that's not completely fenced in. During a walk back from a gym Saturday night, guards noticed they were missing.
And at this point,
York Correctional Institution in Niantic is Connecticut's only women's prison, with an adjacent annex, housing female offenders of all security levels. York is not typically high on the most violent list, but it has recently become notorious for a different reason: multiple staff members sexually abusing inmates. A 2025 investigation by Disability Rights Connecticut found that the DOC had failed to protect women in custody with mental illness from sexual abuse by correction officers. In practice, that meant at least 6 corrections officers were charged or convicted of sexually assaulting female prisoners, some with serious mental health issues, since 2021. The probe uncovered a long pattern of rape and misconduct with victims too vulnerable and isolated to report it. York has also seen occasional riots and lockdowns, but it's the revelations of abuse that have drawn the most reform pressure. Advocates say the conditions at York, especially how mentally ill inmates were handled, reflected systemic neglect by the DOC. In late 2025, the DOC announced new camera placements and policy changes to prevent future abuse, and several former officers are facing criminal charges.
A female officer struggled to save her own life after being attacked by an inmate Monday. The Corrections Union, AFS-CME Local 391, says the incident happened just before 3:30 p.m. while the officer was conducting a security check. Officials tell us she was attacked from behind and dragged by the inmate into a camera dead zone where the facility lacks of any camera coverage and tried to sexually assault her. Without warning or provocation, the inmate began to choke and punch her in the face. The union tells us she fought him until staff arrived and says she suffered a fractured eye socket, plus cuts and bruises.
Correction is investigating the death of an inmate at the Osborne Correctional Facility in Summers. 36-year-old Jose Peralta was found lying on his back on the floor early Thursday morning. He was conscious and taken to the infirmary. His condition worsened and he was rushed to a local emergency room where he was pronounced dead.
Osborne Correctional Institution, located in Summers, was once the state's maximum security prison, but is now a level 3, medium security, facility. It houses a very large inmate population in multiple housing units under a unit management model. Traditionally, Osborne focused on medical, mental health, and vocational programs. Inmate-on-inmate violence at Osborne has been reported, but is not unusually high. Instead, Osborne's notoriety in 2023-2025 comes from inhumane living conditions. The 2025 report by the state's correctional ombudsman highlighted the summer heat as a serious threat. Inspectors recorded many Osborne cell blocks above 90 degrees, and inmates complained that guards would turn off fans as retaliation when prisoners grumbled. There was no working air conditioning. Overcrowding made it worse. Some prisoners had to sleep in gymnasiums with only one small fan and scarce water.
Officials say inmate Elijah Hamlin refused direct orders to return back to his cell. That's when correctional officers Anthony Marlick, Joshua Johnson, and Patrick McGoldrick got physical. According to their arrest warrants, a state trooper ultimately found the officers used excessive force before utilizing other means of body control reasonable to Hamlin's resistance.
Corrigan Correctional Center in Uncasville is a medium-high security prison for both pretrial and sentenced offenders from Eastern Connecticut courts. The facility even runs a special close monitoring unit to segregate inmates classified as gang members, offering anger management and cultural gang awareness programs in an effort to counter violence. Yet violence has flared up at Corrigan. In August 2023, union leaders reported a large, multi-inmate gang fight breaking out during recreation time. That incident, part of a worrying trend of unrest, led to lockdowns and a renewed demand by officers for more safety measures. A month earlier, 2 Corrigan officers had been among those assaulted during an unrelated series of prison attacks.
An agreement has been reached to address conditions for children at the Manson Youth Institution in Cheshire. The Justice Department and Connecticut Department of Correction agreed that Manson will eliminate the use of disciplinary isolation on children in its custody. Under the agreement, Manson will also implement a behavior management program that incentivizes positive behavior.
Cheshire Correctional Institution is a sprawling level 4 men's prison that confines both sentenced and unsentenced offenders, with special units for protective custody and restrictive housing. It has long housed inmates serving decades or life. Violent incidents at Cheshire have drawn headlines. In August 2025, for example, a prisoner threw hot coffee in an officer's face, then brandished a shiv and repeatedly tried to stab the officer in the head and neck. This vicious August 19th attack, captured on cell block camera, left the guard bleeding and caused 3 staffers to be hospitalized while restraining the inmate. Union officials described it as part of a crisis-level surge in assaults on corrections staff. Just days prior, another Cheshire officer had been attacked during cell transfer. Guards cite overcrowding, staffing shortages, and policy changes as factors. DOC reports confirm a dramatic rise in inmate stabbings and fights across facilities. In public statements, union leaders have warned that life has become increasingly dangerous for officers at Cheshire and other prisons, even as the state struggles to install more towers and surveillance. The Manson Youth Institution in Cheshire is Connecticut's high-security prison for male offenders under 21. It consists of 10 dormitory-style units and serves as the DOC's only dedicated facility for juvenile and young adult inmates. In 2021, the Federal Department of Justice opened a civil rights investigation into Manson and found that the DOC was using extended solitary confinement, disciplinary isolation, on youth in ways that violated their constitutional rights. By August 2024, Connecticut reached a compliance agreement with the DOJ. Manson must abolish punitive isolation for juveniles and implement a new behavior management program with structured, age-appropriate activities throughout the day. Advocacy groups point out that conditions at Manson had become as bad as in adult prisons, cramped, understaffed, and prone to violence in the cell blocks. As of 2025, DOC reports say implementation of the settlement is underway, but monitors have found that progress.
Number 5. We have Santa Rosa Correctional Institution.
Florida Prison Stories, we're back at it, and we're going to take a little trip to Santa Rosa, Florida. Granted, I've never been to Santa Rosa, but I know plenty of people who have. Now, when I was in prison, Santa Rosa was notorious for its CM program, CM meaning controlled management. Now, there are 3 different levels to CM, CM 1, 2, and 3, each with varying levels of restrictions. So if you ever wonder what happens if you fuck up too many times within the Florida Department of Corrections, look no further, this is your answer. You see, this is where Santa Rosa is. And this is where the majority of people in Florida prisons come from. So you're already in a lose-lose situation if you already landed at this place because you're the better part of a day away from your family, and on top of it all, the guards absolutely suck there. And notoriously, they turn the heaters on during the Florida summers and put a lot of restrictions on you as far as blankets and jackets during the winter. But the worst story that I ever heard was of one guard who smeared cow shit all over this guy's window and he had to breathe that shit in 24/7 for God knows how long.
We're discussing one of the most notorious prisons in Florida, the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution. With a capacity of 1,614 inmates, this prison has become notorious for its high levels of gang violence and racial tensions. Over the years, the gang violence in this prison has only gotten worse, and the situation has been compounded by incidents of violent behavior from correctional officers. There have been numerous reports of murders between different ethnic groups within the prison, and a constant state of conflict between officers and gang members. It's clear that the situation at the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution is a major cause for concern. The high levels of violence and racial tensions can create a dangerous and unstable environment for both the inmates and the staff. It's important for authorities to take action to address these issues and make the necessary changes to improve conditions within the prison. By creating a safer and more stable environment, we can help to reduce the violence and racial tensions that have become so prevalent in the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution. At number 4, we have Columbia Correctional Institution.
We spoke with an inmate today who describes what was going on from inside the prison walls.
Although they told you guys we was getting hot meals, it took at least a week before we even got a hot meal. That was only Monday through Friday. And we was asking them, like, what's up with the weekend? They said, well, no hot meals on the weekend. And it was hard to get this information out because we couldn't call home. We were scared to write because they open up our mail before it goes out. Even now, speaking out, I'm putting myself at risk. Being cut off from the world like that, that has never happened. In my 19 years in prison, I have never spent that much time without access to a file or a visit.
Now, the DOC did respond to that statement.
At number 4, we discuss the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution, one of the worst prisons in Florida. This prison, located just outside of Lake City in northern Florida, opened its doors in 1992 and is designed to hold over 1,427 inmates. Inmates have frequently complained about the inadequate facilities, lack of cleanliness and maintenance, and other hygiene issues within the prison. This has led to an unpleasant and potentially unhealthy environment for those who are incarcerated. Additionally, there have been reports of deaths within the prison, which many believe are linked to gang violence or drug overdoses. Smuggling of drugs into the prison is a serious issue and highlights the need for increased safety measures and a more secure environment. It's important for authorities to regularly inspect prisons and address any issues promptly in order to ensure that they are safe and humane for those who are incarcerated. By working to improve the living conditions and security within the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution, we can help to create a better environment for the inmates and staff alike. At number 3, we have Dade Correctional Institution.
As they search for this man who was in a work-share program because he was nearing the end of his sentence, and he simply walked away. From the air, on the ground, and by bloodhound, an intense search underway for an escaped inmate. 40-year-old Marv Hubert serving a 20-year sentence for burglary who walked away from a work program.
4 corrections officers facing the other side of the law accused of beating to death 60-year-old inmate Ronald Ingram at the Dade Correctional Institution.
Today, we're discussing another one of the worst prisons in Florida, the Dade Correctional Institution. Located just 40 miles south of central Miami, this prison was opened in 1996 and has been the center of controversy ever since. The Dade Correctional Institution has faced a number of serious issues, including excessive use of force by guards, prison fights, gang violence, and inadequate health facilities. This has led to an environment that is unsafe and potentially inhumane for both inmates and staff. In early 2022, 4 guards were charged with smuggling contraband into the prison and using excessive force, which resulted in 1 death. This is a step in the right direction, but it is clear that much more needs to be done to address the ongoing problems within the Dade Correctional Institution. It's important for authorities to take swift and meaningful action to address the issues within the Dade Correctional Institution. By working to improve the safety and living conditions for both inmates and staff, we can help to create a better environment for all those who are affected by the prison. Number 2, we have Martin Correctional Facility.
Florida prisons, and we're back at it. We're going to Martin Correctional Institution, y'all. Now, when I was at Martin CI, it was kind of a love-hate relationship. You loved it and you hated it all at the same time. On the one hand, you'd love it because there's almost anything you want at Martin CI. With a few exceptions, the staff was pretty lenient too when it came down to it. Now, on the flip side of that equation, you probably hated it because the fact of the matter was we were always getting locked down because people were always getting stabbed left and right when I was there. Once the K2 and Spice was invented and introduced to that compound, shit went way downhill. There was also a protective management dorm on the compound, separated from everybody else, so whenever they had to move around the compound, they had to lock everybody else down to make sure that they wouldn't get attacked. It's also dirty as shit, but honestly, that's nothing new about Florida prisons.
The Martin Correctional Institution was thrust into the spotlight in 2019 after a secret video of the conditions inside the prison was released online. The video was a shock to many, as it showed graphic scenes of violence, drug use, overdoses, and inadequate medical care for inmates. Despite promises of improvement from authorities, it's unclear if real change has been made. This highlights the importance of keeping a close eye on the conditions in our prisons and ensuring the safety and well-being of all those affected by the criminal justice system. At number 1, we have Florida State Prison.
When I first got to FSP, they put me in a room that had 2 doors. So they put you in there, they shut the first set, it's actually like a row of bars. They shut the bars, boom. Now I remember they put me in there too, right? They put you in, they uncuffed me. They said, your ass will not be getting out of here, because this one that they put me in had no windows. It's got 2 sets of doors, so they shut the bars, and then there's an outside door that's solid steel. Basically, there's no getting out of there, period. You got no communication. You're not talking to other people.
Built in 1913, the prison was originally known as Florida State Prison and has been known for its terrible reputation. The prison has its own prison farm, where inmates are made to work during their daily routine. While the inmates are paid for their work, many have reported instances of excessive force from guards and brutal treatment to get the work done. Some prisoners have even had to spend time on sick leave due to the beatings they've received.
Number 5, we have Walton Correctional Institution.
It's Appreciation Week for correctional officers and nurses, people that work to serve others on a daily basis. News 13's Kimber Collins got a behind-the-scenes look at the Walton County Jail as they celebrate both jobs under the same roof.
Whether it's protecting inmates or treating them, Walton County staff says the job behind bars is different than what the outside world may think.
Today, we will be discussing a prison that has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. The Walton Correctional Institution. Opened in 1990, the Walton Correctional Institution is located in Defuniak Springs, Walton County, Florida, and has a capacity of 1,201 inmates. Despite its relatively small size, the prison has been making headlines for all the wrong reasons. News of prisoners being beaten severely by guards and then denied access to medical care is a common occurrence in this prison. While authorities have fired several guards over the use of excessive force, it appears that it has not been enough to curb the problem. Reports of guards abusing their authority are still a common occurrence. At number 4, we have DeSoto Annex Prison.
story tonight. A federal grand jury hands down a 3-count indictment charging a former DeSoto Parish correctional officer with federal civil rights violations. Now, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, Javarie Pounce, seen here in footage that KSLA News 12 obtained during our special investigation into the mistreatment.
County deputies say a woman showed up for a visit at the county jail with her infant grandchild and, get this, more than 100 grams of drugs. Investigators say a canine unit also searched 44-year-old Melissa Webster's car and found more than 680 additional grams of heroin and cocaine placed near a baby's car. Now, Webster is charged with trafficking heroin and cocaine, bringing contraband into a correctional facility, and child abuse.
Today, we will be discussing a prison that has been facing various problems despite its relatively good reputation. The DeSoto Correctional Institution. Opened in 1996, the DeSoto Correctional Institution is located in DeSoto County, Florida, and houses a mixed security level of male inmates. Despite its good reputation, the prison is still facing several challenges that make it one of the worst in Florida. One of the major problems faced by the prison is overcrowding. Inmates are often located in cells with several other inmates, which hampers their access to facilities and contributes to the unhealthy living conditions in the prison. Another major issue faced by the prison is the use of excessive force by guards. Despite widespread condemnation and a few guards being fired, some guards still believe that excessive force is the only way to restore law and order in the prison. At number 3, we have Charlotte Correctional Institution.
The Charlotte County prison guard had to spend the night in jail herself because investigators say she showed up to work yesterday with all of this hidden inside her pants. 9 cell phones, 2 SIM cards, and 2 power cords. All of it was stuffed between her underwear and a pair of shorts.
Another suspicious death of an inmate at the Charlotte Correctional Institution. There are now 7 deaths under investigation there.
Robert Peterkin was found dead in Charlotte Correctional Institution on June 4th after sources inside the prison alerted me today to his death. The state confirmed they were conducting a criminal investigation.
Charlotte County correctional officer was treated after being attacked by an inmate. This is according to investigators. The department says Omar Bleachington struck the officer in the face with a closed fist. Staff responded appropriately, and the inmate was subdued.
Today, we will be uncovering the harsh realities of the Charlotte Correctional Institution. It was the death of an inmate at the hands of a guard that brought the Charlotte Correctional Institution to the forefront of the news. But little did we know about the numerous problems that this prison faced. In 2015, there were 6 unexplained deaths of inmates that were reported. To this day, authorities have yet to reveal the reason behind these deaths, putting a question mark on the safety and security of the prisoners in this facility. The Charlotte Correctional Institution is also facing the problem of overcrowding, which has led to inmates sleeping on the floor and living in very dirty conditions. This only adds to the already harsh conditions that the prisoners face. At number 2, we have Sewanee Correctional Institution.
Fucci was booked into Sewanee Correctional Institution. It's west of Lake City. It houses a little more than 1,100 inmates. What is rare about this is how quickly this happened. In these situations, it usually takes weeks before someone is transported to prison to serve their sentence.
Today, we will be taking a look at the Sewanee Correctional Institution. Opened in 2009, the Sewanee Correctional Institution is relatively new, but it's already making headlines for all the wrong reasons. This prison can house over 1,500 inmates, but it has the most use of first incidents per 100 inmates of any other prison in Florida. The authorities are struggling to bring order to the prison as inmate gangs have made things worse. The situation has become so dire that the FBI has been involved to help the authorities counter some of the issues that they face. At number 1, we have Lowell Prison.
In Lowell Correctional Facility, it's legal prostitution. It's like a brothel. It's like a predator's playground.
We're prey. It's like a lion with a bunch of gazelles.
I mean, it's a perfect breeding ground for sexual predators.
Assistant Warden Martinez, known to many of the female inmates as Marty and Daddy, was fired amid allegations of misconduct with inmates. When reached by phone and asked about the allegations, Martinez declined to comment.
Hey guys, this is Kay coming from Lowell Gap. Prison News. The days are dark ass black coffee.
Keiko Kopp, a prisoner at Lowell Correctional Institution, always starts her newscast on TikTok describing the day as dark as black coffee.
I want to create awareness. You have no idea what's really going on in here.
Kopp, who goes by Kay, has 156,000 followers.
It piqued my interest, and that's why I started digging into this story to try to figure out what and why an inmate would be beat to the point where they are now paraplegic.
Lowell Correctional Institution is the largest prison for women in the country. Most of the corrections officers here are men.
Today, we will be talking about Lowell Prison, one of the most notorious female prisons in the state of Florida. Located in Marion County, Central Florida, Lowell Prison has a capacity of over 3,000 inmates and has been open since 1956. However, the prison has been shrouded in controversy for years due to violence, drug use, excessive force by guards, and the rampant cases of sexual abuse. Inmates have reported that sexual abuse is so common in Lowell that the prison is often referred to as a place where rape is legal. These allegations have been substantiated by numerous reports and investigations over the years. In 2020, Lowell Prison was hit by the COVID-19 outbreak, making the already difficult conditions for inmates even worse. This is not the first time the prison has faced a health crisis. In 2004, an outbreak of tuberculosis infected several prisoners, causing...
The stories you've heard today reveal that the danger inside these prisons isn't caused by a single incident. It's the result of years of gang influence, overcrowding, contraband trafficking, staff shortages, violence, and systemic challenges that continue to affect correctional systems across the East Coast. While every prison and every inmate has a different story, these facilities have repeatedly been at the center of major riots, deadly assaults, corruption investigations, and high-profile security failures that continue to shape public discussion about prison safety and reform. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe to All Scoops Media, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into America's most dangerous prisons, gangs, and criminal organizations.